all product, faced with hard luck. Faced with hard luck. Card shots, thieves, murderers with hard luck. Pimps and card shots, thieves, murderers with hard luck. We all product, faced with hard luck. Faced with hard luck. Card shots, thieves, murderers with hard luck. Pimps and card shots, thieves, murderers with hard luck.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Hard Luck Show.
Yeah.
I'm your certified, qualified West Side host, Steve Lucky Luciano.
Yeah.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. You have tuned into the greatest show on earth.
Yeah.
We're coming at you from the Virus Bunker in Southern California.
Yeah.
Sitting across from me, my partner and co-host,
is Chumahan Bowen, American Indian, elegant barbarian, Southern Californian, coming to be savage.
Yeah.
Once again.
Once and for all.
Look out.
Look out.
Look out.
Look out. Look out.
We're
coming. Yeah.
Pain to the sunrise, getting braided up as my pain dries.
What?
Yeah.
Come on.
The red sky, my lady singing
What?
out war cry. We'll break them up
Come on.
like mannequins.
Yeah.
Looking in the
Yeah.
Get
Come
pumped
on.
up over here.
Warpath.
Yeah.
What? Warpath.
Man.
Warpath.
Savage up here.
Yeah.
And on sound, sitting across from, hey, I'm not done introducing you. Sitting across from me, old Blue Eyes.
Sean Lewis, certified audio professional engineer for the hard luck.
Bumbleclot.
Yeah.
So,
Little Rasta Araga.
Yeah. Bumbleclot.
Yeah.
Give me some
it
of
up.
that chocolate cake.
That's how you're feeling today, Sean?
yeah.
Yeah, because you
I
saw
like
those
that.
blunts.
Yeah.
Right.
Little Rasta. Rastafari.
Yeah. Irie, man.
Ariman. And our reoccurring guest
Whoa.
is like family.
Whoa.
A handsome guy with a shattered heel
And a big dick.
big open heart. Yeah, Mr. Brian.
Come on.
Stevens.
That's right.
Welcome
That's
back
right.
to the show, Brian
He's
Stevens.
dancing.
It's my pleasure.
Look at that. He's doing a centipede on the floor right now.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Is that what that's called?
Doesn't look a day over 64.
It looks so 64 years young. Look at his face.
He
That
doesn't
was
look a
uncalled
day
for.
over. Hey, he doesn't look a day over 45.
There you go. That's
Love
right.
that guy, man.
Man, if looks could kill, Steve, he would be doing life.
That's it.
I was.
Listen, we today have a very, very, very special guest that's driven out to see us. This is a gentleman, man, that's inspired hundreds, if not thousands, inspired me. Just a special, special guest today who's been on quite a journey, and he's here today to share that journey with us. Guys, let's welcome Jack to the show. Welcome in, Jack. Welcome, Jack.
Thank you. Thank you.
What it is?
And,
What
hey,
is-
you might have one of the coldest intro songs. Man, Jopatan. It's your song right here, huh?
I like the song.
Yeah.
I mean, you
How can you
know,
not like this song?
the whole thing about Gentleman Jack is that he was pure class when he stepped into the bunker, right?
Absolutely, bro.
Guy's dressed to the T's, he's got a beautiful hat, he's laid back.
He's you can tell right away. You can feel his
Absolutely.
vibe as soon as you walked in the door.
Gentleman Jack,
Gentleman Jack.
smooth, classy.
Smooth, original.
Right.
Jack, thank you for coming in, man. Thank you for coming to the show.
Thank you for
Jack.
having me here. I'm honored and grateful.
I'll tell you something interesting, Jack, is as we were preparing for this show and as me and you had talked over the phone and locked down our date for you to come on, I had begun to start having some conversations about you with a couple people that I really love, respect, that have been through the system and at times in their life, and your name came up, and I got to tell you, man, out of like the 4 or 5 people that I talk about, everything that came out of their mouth, they couldn't speak more highly of this gentleman and his work that he's done, and just the type of
What is it that makes them speak so highly of Gentleman Jack?
Well, we're going to get into that. But Jack's here. Took a drive in today.
Yeah.
And like I said, Jack, he's going to let us know.
Okay.
Jack's had quite a journey, And we're just here to find out what's going on, what brought Jack
Well, what do you
place that he stands at right now.
Right. Where do you think we should start? What do you think is a good jumping off point for Jack? What do you think, Jack?
Jack, what do you think, Jack?
Well, I mean, it's hard to say. Everybody wants to know something different about somebody, and I guess the best place to start is asking those questions that are interesting to you, and if I can answer them, then that's the place we're going to go from.
This
I like
is,
it.
You know what, Jack? Well, let's get right to it. Jack. Let me just ask you right now, Jack. What are you currently doing right now? Where are you at right now? What's the 411 on you today?
Actually, right now I'm pretty happy. I'm actually staying with my mother, which I don't mind. A lot of people say you're a grown man. I'm staying with my mother because she's old. She needs assistance, and I spent 40 years in a cell wishing I could sit across the table with my mother and eat dinner and talk about nothing but the day. And I'm doing that now.
What was the reason?
blessed.
What was the reason that you had to spend 40 years in a cell?
When I was a young man, I had just been released from youth authority. All my life I'd been in jail.
Right.
But when I was released from youth authority, within 90 days, I had picked up a hot one and sentenced. And 6 months later, I was in San Quentin.
For our guests who sometimes may not know what the
They don't
phrase
know.
"hot one" is, can you specify or clarify that for
I
us?
apologize. Yes,
That's all right.
Hot one is a term relating to the case of murder, 187.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So how long were you in youth authority before you got out?
I did 2 years in the youth authority. Before then, I was in juvenile camp. Before then, I was in family treatments. So I was mentioning to Lucky, since about the age of 12, I've been in jail.
What area were you living in?
Whatever area the institution was in. But I know what you're saying. I was just taking a cheap shot.
Oh, Blue Eyes got a little.
I told you
he was funny. I live in Norwalk. In fact, I still live there today. I still walk the same streets that I walked when I was a young boy.
Wow. Did you think you were ever going to get back home and be able to walk those streets?
Oh, absolutely not. No,
Right.
I absolutely believe that I was going to die in prison. How that was going to happen, who knows? But I was already reserved to that fact, and so let it come.
So what decade or when exactly?
Yeah, well, let's put like a year and an age on, just to start with, of this this case that you picked up.
So the case that sent me to prison, it was an original case. I was sentenced to 15 to life. It was in 1978. And I was eligible for parole. I was actually eligible for parole within 10 years. But, I was not one of those people that conform to rules and regulations. So I drove that 10-year sentence up into 40 years.
Man,
Jesus Christ.
It's easy to do.
why is that, Brian?
Well, I relate to what Jack's saying because as a young man, I went to prison. I was in prison. I got a 25 to life. I got the other sentences you didn't get. But I did 35 years because I didn't conform. And if you don't follow the rules in prison, you can't follow the rules of life. There's too many eyes on you, of your own people, looking to hurt you if you step out of line. So you do what you have to do. You think like they think, even though you don't believe what they think a lot of times, you still have to conform to it, and your actions have to dictate what they think.
You're conforming to a different set of bylaws.
Absolutely. And it's a sick place, and I understand how you do 40 years. I get it.
Yeah, you live in an environment where you have to adapt to that environment. I mean, it's an environment of insanity, but it's only the people that are sane that are crazy there.
Now, let me ask you, wait, how old are you at this time in 78?
18 years old.
18 years old.
Man.
Yeah, I was 18. I just got out of YA. I was out a few months, and I picked up the case.
So I don't want to sidetrack the conversation because I know we got a lot to talk about here, but so this started as a young age. You were getting in a lot of trouble.
Since the age of 12, I had been going to jail. I was mentioning to Lucky that I had been on some type of custody, since about 12 years old. I started going to juvenile halls for assaults or
Why
drunken
was
drinking.
that?
I was young. I was trying to meet the standards of the environment in which I was living. And in those days, I was subject to the peer pressures of my surroundings. And I was living in the neighborhood, and I was running around with the people in those neighborhoods, and we didn't have any restraints on us. So we did what we wanted to do when we wanted to do it.
Right.
Unfortunately, what we wanted to do was all illegal.
Right.
Right.
What was Norwalk like at that time?
It was, a lot of it was just coming off from being dirt roads.
Right.
You know, there was, most of it was cow pastures and strawberry fields.
Right.
And those of us that were running around in the city were, we were poor. We didn't know we were poor because we were too young to understand what poor and rich was.
Right. You just knew what you knew.
We just knew what we knew. And, for us, stealing strawberries to bring them home and eat them wasn't something that, we have to do that so we can have something to eat. To us, it was, the fact that we were able to steal strawberries.
Right.
Or I tell people a lot of times I rustled cattle.
Is that true?
Yeah, I used to steal cows.
No shit. How do you steal a cow?
Carefully.
Good answer.
Yeah, I used to steal cows, and then we'd pay this little butcher shop that rented out meat lockers.
Right.
And
Wow.
so we had meat.
No, but so how do you steal a cow?
Well, you get the smaller cows, and you just back a truck up, walk them up into the ramp, and you take them. At that time, like I said, it was a lot of fields.
Right.
But at that time, there was also a lot of bars. And these bars had behind them corrals, raising chickens and pigs and goats. So we used to pay this bar that was called the Jamaica right there on Norwalk Boulevard. And they would corral the cow for us. And for a year, we'd fatten this cow up.
No shit.
Yeah, so from a baby cow over a year, you fatten him up. And then when he gets fat enough, you shoot him and butcher him.
Right. I mean, just as they do in the feedlots.
Same way.
So that's an exclusive on the Hard Luck Show in case you want to know how to cattle wrestle and how to fatten a cow.
I'm not saying you should do that. In
I
fact,
know,
you should
of course.
absolutely not do that. But, I mean, that's something I did.
Right.
Okay.
And so did they brand these cattle? I mean,
No, they weren't brand. But you couldn't take the milk cows. You had to catch the cows when they were young before they branded them up. And they were still out in the fields.
See. I got it. All right, cool.
So around that time in Norwalk, this is pre 78.
Yes.
Is this a gang active? Is this
You know what? I'm kind of rough on the term gang.
right?
Because when you think about it, who defines what is a gang? Me, I was growing up in a neighborhood. These were the guys that I had grew up with. This was my community.
Right.
Somebody else defined us as a gang.
Right.
You know what I mean? But these boys, I heard Lucky mention to somebody earlier, how long have you known me? Well, I've known you 20 years, 30 years. Well, these are the guys that I grew up with. We had knees torn on our jeans. You know what I mean? We threw dirt clods at each other.
Right.
So this was my community. Right. And when we grew from 7 years old to 10 years old to 12 to 15, we were living our lives together. And somewhere in that parameter, somebody says they're a gang and they live in this area and this is the neighborhood that is belonging to that gang.
They defined.
Right.
Someone else
you guys
defined
were more
it,
like
right.
brothers.
And to this day, that is how a lot of people nowadays, those people that are living the lifestyle that I did back then, accept the term as gang because it gives them a bonding with those that they're around. They had turned the term gang for them from a negative connotation into something that's binding with them. It's like anything else. What was it? Barack Obama had Obamacare. Initially, it was negative.
Right.
And then they used it as a positive term. Chicano power.
Right.
Originally, it was a negative connotation. But then they accepted it, and you were buying patches and put it on your jackets in the 70s. You know what I mean?
Right. So you were saying redefining the labels that they put on you and taking ownership of it and having some pride in it.
Right. So when someone asks me about gang, I don't see myself as a gang. In a gang, I see myself as part of a community that has been labeled by some outside force as a gang simply because for them it was more beneficial.
Right.
So when you spent 40 years in the institution and came back to Norwalk, had it changed?
Absolutely has changed. I mean, I walk, and so you understand, I walk through my neighborhood every week. I go, I get on my bike in my short pants and I ride my bike into it. I walk around in it. I meet the people. When I see someone there, I'll drive up to them and I'll, on my bike, and I'll tell them, what's your name? Who are you? And most of the time it's somebody's child.
Right.
Oh yeah, I know your grandfather. I know your father. But yeah, it is absolutely changed.
What's the biggest change?
Wow.
I mean, you can't steal cows anymore.
No, absolutely. There's nothing like that in Norwalk no more. There's no cow fields. There's no strawberry patches. Nothing but homes.
Right.
But there are things about it that are memorable.
Right.
The scene is different, but I could stare at a location in my neighborhood now and capture a memory.
Yeah.
And that makes it what it was. And then when my mind gets back to reality, I understand that I'm somewhere else now.
That's fascinating. So when you look at what's been built up over what wasn't there when you were there, can you still see behind that?
You see behind it.
You can.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the greatest things about being a human being is the ability to recall what you've known in the past. I mean, it's like a Native American religion.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not written, it's spoken, and it's handed down through the generations of what was, and it manifests into something else, and it evolves, and it develops into something else. So each person has a different understanding of what that belief is.
Right.
Well, that's me. I walk through my neighborhood, and I capture moments that I had lived decades ago. But I enjoy that because I was in a windowless concrete cell.
Right.
And that's all I had to look at, until those images faded.
Do you think that your ability to visualize has actually grown or is stronger because that's all you had for so long?
I don't know if it's grown or I don't know if it's grown. In fact, it has it diminished in there because you lose the ability to recall. And soon you develop your own scenarios. And at some point, they are just lies you made up in order to continue on with something that once was.
Interesting.
May I ask you something? So, Jack, you're a young kid. You're getting in and out of trouble. You're 18. As you're growing up, do you have siblings? Was mom and dad in the house? What was the family scenario kind of like?
So I had a great family life. A lot of people will turn to things that were negative in their life, that say impacted their life to result in the direction or path they taken. But I had a wonderful life. Like I said, we weren't rich.
But you didn't know it.
Didn't know it. But my father was in the military, 20 years.
Which branch?
The Navy.
Okay.
My uncles were were Air Force, Army. My whole family, all the males were military. My father had purchased us the home, which back then was only $14,000. But you know what I mean?
Crazy, bro. Yeah. It's crazy.
And it had a swimming pool.
That's just
but it's and my mother, she worked. My grandparents lived with us. It was exactly the type of life somebody wanted to live. I just liked living the life I lived. And
which was
unfortunately, that was not inside the house. That was outside the house.
Right.
And because of that, it meant that I had no authority over me, telling me how to or how not to act. Instead, I lived based on what was being accepted, and what was taking place on the streets at that time.
Right.
So let's. So in your case that they brought, did you go to trial or did you take a deal?
No, I went to trial.
Was it a crazy trial?
It was within 6 months. I was arrested and in prison. To me, it was fascinating. That was my first time in the county jail. I
Right.
just turned 18 years old. I went to the county jail, and it was great. I mean,
What was so great about the county jail?
I was in the environment that I had been living in. You know what I mean?
Right.
I was in my environment. It wasn't like I wasn't placed in something foreign to me, other than that I had to sleep in a cell.
Right.
You know. So when I say that it wasn't foreign to me, is because the people that were in there were the people that I had been growing up with all my life.
Right.
The lifestyle that was taking place in there was the lifestyle I had been living out here in the streets.
Right.
You know, the difference was the ages. Okay. Now I was around people that were 50, 60, 40, 30.
Did you feel like you were entering a man's world at that point? Because
No.
you were 18.
I felt I was entering into an environment where I would be quiet a lot and listen more.
Right.
And I did, and I seen a lot of things, and I learned a lot of things. And a few months later, I was in prison.
And in the case, what were the facts of the case that they brought against you?
They said that I had a homie, and homie is a person that I was growing up with all
Right.
my life. And he was telling me that somebody else was saying he was an informant. And as a result of that, one night we were all getting together, and I found this individual, and I got my friend together, and I told him, look, you're saying this guy's an informant? Take care of it right now. So they fought. During that period of time, something happened, and the guy that was not well accepted was stabbed and killed.
Got it.
I was convicted for that, and in fact, I was responsible for that. Okay?
Right.
So, I mean, this... and so you understand, the guy that got killed, his name was Julian Insignia. I'll never forget his name, and I'll never... there's not a day that I don't think about this man. He was a good man. He was somebody that I liked at that moment. But being a good man and being somebody you like, it's not relevant,
Right.
to your existence in that world.
Right.
That's not going to save you.
That's not going to save
There are
you.
certain codes of conduct.
There are certain codes. So this guy was involved in a fist fight with my friend from my neighborhood. Therefore, he got my support. And as a result, Julian Insignia was stabbed and killed.
Now, after some time
Oh,
reflect...
and the guy, my friend,
yeah.
told on me.
Wow.
Oh no!
And wait a second,
What?
because so let me, if I can understand this and say it in a certain way. You were taking care. Some business was taken care of because somebody was an informant. You supported somebody in that, and somebody got hurt. And
You
then
could say that you wouldn't. There's no. You could say everything.
all right.
I don't
So
have
the guy
any-
that got stabbed and he passes away, and then the guy that you were supporting became an informant against you.
Yes.
What lesson do you draw from that?
I draw no lesson from that. I just suffered the results of it. The lessons you learn are not the lessons of the immediate actions that take place. Lessons are learned as a result of living life.
And did that guy testify in court against you?
Yes.
And he looked you in your face and
Yes.
said, "Yeah, that's him, and he did it."
Yes.
See, this is Steve. I always trip on this
You
because
you shouldn't be surprised.
surprised, yeah.
Look there are two things when you're living in a lifestyle relating to crooks and criminals.
Yeah.
Okay. One will tell, one won't.
Right.
But they go hand in hand. It's like yin and yang. Criminals can't exist without informants. You know what I mean? It's like cops and criminals. If there was no criminals, there'd be no cops.
Right.
It's the same thing. They coexist.
Well, okay, but that's not what I'm surprised at. It's not that they exist. What I'm surprised at is that when any person decides to become part of an organization or team, and part of the code is we're not going to do that, and because of that, we can do certain things because no one's going to talk. But then story after story after story you hear about these teams is just what you said. There's going to be an informant.
There will always be an informant.
So then the idea of how can they sell loyalty knowing that that's in there?
Well, it's the belief or the hope of loyalty, but it's not a reality. You know what I mean? It's not a reality. No matter what you do, there's always going to be somebody. And I'm going to say this too, and a lot of people are going to disagree with it. But you know what? I don't hold any animosities towards somebody that ultimately informs. I used to. I used to say, man, they're dirty individuals, and they're this
Rats,
and they're that, and snitches, all that stuff.
Right.
But you know what? I lived in a cell, and I lived in a windowless concrete box for almost 40 years.
God damn.
You know what I mean? How easy is it to flip over?
Right.
How easy is it to reach that point in your life where you can no longer accept what is being heaped upon you?
Right.
You know, and who are we then to judge a man who has reached his limit, who has reached the pinnacle of what he could take, and he decides something else?
I mean, I understand exactly what you were saying. Oh, Blue Eyes, you were going to ask something?
I was going to say, just it's such a great irony in that story. I mean, here it is that this guy wants to fight another gentleman because he's a snitch, and then something happens that's way out of his control, I guess, and you know, someone's killed, and then he turns around and snitches on you. I mean, the code that he's trying to live by in order to have the fight in the first place is broken. So,
well, here's the thing. You're thinking of him trying to live by the code. That's not the case.
Right.
The case is your belief of what the code is and your reflection of your belief on that person. You need to live by this code because I live by this code.
Right.
I believe in this code, therefore you believe in this code.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is, he's not obligated to believe in what you believe in, and he's not obligated to live the same way you believe you should live.
right, but if he didn't believe it in the first place, then why is he trying to fight?
No. You understand what Gentleman Jack is saying?
No, I don't.
Gentleman Jack is saying just because he believed in the code, he's assuming that just because this other guy's running in the same circles, he does too. But that's a projection from Gentleman
Yeah, he's
Jack.
not even assuming. He's projecting that you're going to, and you do.
Right.
You're
And-
actually hoping he's going to.
Right. And you know what? Gentleman Jack, you just gave me the title for the show, The Hope of Loyalty.
That's a good
How
one.
good is that?
That's perfect.
Right? So, okay, so he testifies against you, right? Did you take the stand in your own defense?
Yes.
And how did that go? Did they cross-examine you?
No, I lied. You know what I mean? I tried to give him some story that was full of holes. I mean,
What was the story?
it was Swiss cheese, man. It was but I didn't care. Like I told you, to me, it was all just a big cakewalk. You know what I mean?
Right.
I wanted to get into the position where I was able to say the terms, you know what, I'm going to take 12 in the box.
Right.
Because that's what gangsters did.
Right. That's earning your stripes.
You know what I mean?
I'm
Earning
taking
your
it to the
stripes.
box.
Yeah, so when they came to me and they offered me a deal,
Right.
I told them, man, I'm going to take 12 in the box.
Tough guy.
Right.
Tough
Right.
guy.
Because I was a tough guy.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Take your deal and shove it.
Yeah, and it ended up, I got sentenced to 15 years to life.
Okay, so you get sentenced to 15 years to life. So you're in county, and up to that point, you said it was like a 6-month deal. You're there. You're with the people that you thought you should be, and it was okay except for you're sleeping in the bed. And then they take you to prison. Tell us about the journey. Just take us all the way up to the front door of that prison. Like, what happened?
It wasn't nothing. It wasn't, you hear stories about people sitting in the bus pulling to a prison and they're afraid and they're that wasn't the case for me.
What was it?
I was sitting in the bus. I was surrounded by people I had known from juvenile halls, from camps, from YAs. It was the same guys that I had been growing up with.
Right.
We'd go out to our neighborhoods, but then we'd come back into the jails and we were all there together again. Well, we were on that bus going to prison together.
Right.
And when we got off that bus, we were all being shipped through the prison system together.
And where did
question
Go ahead.
before we go further. The gentleman that turned Was he sentenced, and how much time was he sentenced to?
No, he wasn't sentenced.
Did he? Did any kind of accident or street justice befall that guy? To your knowledge?
I think so. I'm not sure.
All right.
Can I say something about this?
Yeah,
I
go ahead.
have very similar. Our stories are very similar because I was fighting a hot one, as you say, and I had 2 co-defendants. And when they started talking life sentences, they couldn't wait to testify. I mean, it was that quick.
Right.
I had to sit in the courtroom watching my best friends. One of them I grew up with. One of them sit there and lie to save his own ass. Fuck. And never did a day in jail.
Right.
So I understand the camaraderie, that fake camaraderie we used to call it, as all your homeboys and man, people when they start talking life sentences,
it's a different ballgame.
It's a whole different game.
Yeah, and one of the guys that turned and is partly really responsible for what happened went on to have a successful diamond business, right?
Thank you. Yeah, he's very successful. He's extremely rich, and he hasn't done a fucking thing for me the whole time. I used to carry a lot of. I really did. I did 30.
Still do. I can hear your voice.
That doesn't sound like you got no rest.
Doesn't sound like you got no rest.
Well, I don't love the guy. Let me say this: if he was in this room right now, I wouldn't harbor any. I wouldn't do anything to him.
Of course,
I just wouldn't. I mean, it's not. I mean, I got my life back, and I took a life, and I have to live with that every day.
Right.
But I'm not. I don't wish him any harm. I mean, he's doing well, and so be it. I mean, he did what he thought he had to do. He stayed out of jail. That's what he did.
Right.
And
okay. So all right. So okay. So you're on the bus, camaraderie. But what institution did they take you to first? Was it a transfer place or was it?
At that time, everybody in the Los Angeles, San Bernardino County areas all went to Chino.
Okay.
We were all processed through Chino prison.
All right. And what was the processing like?
The guys that were processing you through were the same guys you were growing up with in jail.
Right.
Cops at those days did not run the prisons. They just held the guns. Mm-hmm. Everybody on the floor was doing time.
Wow.
So when I got processed through, 2 of my homies were working in R&R.
Right.
They gave me all my new clothes and they gave me all the extra tobacco I needed. They put me in the cell that I wanted to go to.
Right.
That's the way jail used to be. You know what I mean? And 2 days later there was a riot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was the first time I had been in a riot.
And
which was
so what was that
interesting.
like? What was that like for you at that first riot?
It was interesting to watch it. It was between the blacks and the whites.
Right.
Mexicans weren't involved.
Right. So you guys were Switzerland. You guys were neutral.
Well, we were in a chow hall, and I remember one of the older homies came and says, when they called chow back, he says, just stand up and step back towards the wall.
Right.
And I said, all right. And when they did that, people pulled knives and started stabbing each other. You know what I mean?
And so you guys just, whoever stepped aside and just watched. And what was that like watching that?
Interesting.
Because?
I mean, it was a giant melee where people were trying to kill each other. You know? And you've seen people running and people going towards them, and you've seen confrontation. It was exactly what you thought it was going to be all the times you've recalled it into existence in your mind.
Interesting. And did you okay, and then how long are you in Chino and then they transfer you out?
I was there maybe 60 days before they sent me to San Quentin.
All right. So and you knew you were going to San Quentin?
Not initially. Not until about 45 days later. They came to my cell and they told me, you're going to San Quentin.
Okay. And still you're surrounded by guys you knew.
Absolutely.
And then you get on, and did they call it the Gray Goose back then, the bus?
Yeah, it was a great goose.
Yeah.
They still call it that.
Right.
Unfortunately, it's green.
I never understood that term. It was always black and white or green.
And so you get on the bus, now you're heading to San Quentin. And at that time, was San Quentin famous as an institution to you?
San Quentin was notorious.
Right.
At that time, you have to remember, this is in 1978. In 1978, there were 12 institutions in California. Now there's 37.
Right.
But at that time, you had Folsom for older people, 35 and up.
Right.
You had San Quentin for people that were older, but also younger because they were assholes. And then you had Soledad, who was filled with young people, and DVI was filled with young people.
Right.
Unfortunately, the prisons were getting kind of full, and they sent me to San Quentin. And so I ended up there. They wanted to lock me up when I first pulled in. They pulled me aside, and they told me, look, you're a young kid. If you step out on this yard, you're going to have problems.
Right.
And, course, I was already living a thug life, so I told him, what the hell are you talking about? Put me on the yard.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, I didn't come here for your protection.
Right.
So I'll live it.
And what happened?
They locked me up for 60 days.
Jack,
San Quentin is, being 18 and pulling up to San Quentin.
No, that was an experience.
That was,
Tell that.
What was that like?
So, I mean, hell, they made movies of San Quentin.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
that's what we're talking about.
Guys made music careers off of doing a concert at
Right.
San Quentin.
And you have to remember, back in those days, there was no guards controlling everything. Prisoners ran everything in the prison system. They put you in the cells they wanted to put you in. They put you in the jobs they wanted to put you in. You walked the yards at the times they wanted you to walk the yard. Everything was done by the prison population.
Right.
So when I pulled up in there, my crime partner, he was already there. He was already on the main line in San Quentin. He had left Chino about 2 weeks before me. So, of course, I knew he was there, and I was going to look for him.
Right.
But pulling in was just a process. But there was a moment to this day that I remember about San Quentin. I was 18 years old. I had been locked up for 60 days on CTQ, confinement to quarters. That's what they called it. While they determined whether I was going to be able to be placed out in the general population because of my age. And they finally brought me down. They classified me, and they asked me, you want to go out? And I said, yes. They said, all right, we're going to let you go out. You have any problems, let us know, and we'll lock you back up. Right. You know what I mean? Now, death row is right next to North Block. North Block is the only 6th-tier block in San Quentin in all the state of California, because the 6th tier is cemented off from the remaining lower 5 tiers, because on the 6th tier, it's death row. And you can only enter death row by entering into North Block and going into the elevator that takes you up. But coming out of that block is the same thing. So when I came down, when they were going to release me to the cell, this is the process. My door is opened up, a guard comes, a prisoner comes, spikes my door open. They call it a spike because they were long keys.
Right.
And they, you stick them in this damn door and turn it, and it sounds just like you imagine prison doors are going to sound.
Right.
And he spikes my door open, and he tells me they want you downstairs. So I go downstairs, and they hand me a fish kit. And they put it on. They always open your hands. They hand me a blanket, a pillowcase full of some toiletries, and a cup.
Why is it called a fish kit? Oh, because you're the new fish.
I'm the new fish.
Got it.
You know what I mean?
Got it.
And they tell me, you're going to go live in South Block. Here's your cell number. And they hand me a piece of paper. And they open these doors, and they push me out, and the doors close behind me. And I'm standing on the yard, 18 years old, with pimples all over my face, a fish kit in my hand, and the yard has about 2,000 people lining up to go to chow out there.
Serious dudes.
Scary experience.
And I'm looking, and walking towards me is this old guy. I later came to know him as Tony from Texas. He has a dead eye, and he's limping, and he's coming right towards me, and I'm looking at him, and I'm thinking, okay, here we go.
Right. Game on.
But the fact of the matter is, Tony just couldn't see, so he's walking straight to I learned that later. But when I did hit the yard, I walked about maybe 100 yards, and I hit the main yard. And the first thing I seen, man, was a group of people I had been going to jail with all my life. They were standing right there. They looked at me, and they said, hey, Indio, because that's what they used to call me.
Why did they call you Indio?
Because when I was younger, I used to carry a hatchet on the streets.
Fuck, I love that.
And they said,
your idol.
They said, hey, Indio, we heard you were here, man. How are you doing? Give us that stuff. And they took the stuff out my hands, and they asked me where I was going to be celled. I told them, and they said, we'll deal with that later. Come on. And they took me into East Block. And we went in there, and we drank Pruno and got drunk.
Yeah.
And then they let me go because Count had been screwed up because I wasn't in my cell. Uh-huh. And I was walking the upper yard. Nobody was there, and I was drunk with my fish kit. And they told me, what the hell are you doing out here? That was my first experience at San Quentin.
Wow. And so you spend some time there, and then I think I gathered from the show notes at some point they put you in solitary or something, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I spent time at San Quentin, but during that period of time, I was also shipped to Fulsom. I was shipped to Soledad. I was what they used to call back then those bus therapy. So I was making the rounds.
Why would they do that?
It disrupts your program.
You can't set roots down.
Right. You're shipped, and that means you don't get your mail because your mail is shipped to the institution you're leaving.
Right.
Your property is shipped in boxes to the institution you're going to. But when you get there, it takes about 30 days to get it. By then, you're shipped again.
Right.
So everything you have is always following you. And you have nothing for that period of time that they're going to keep you on the bus moving around. Can't get visits, you can't get phone calls, you can't have your property, you can't write letters, you can't receive letters. You know what I mean? So
it's an unwritten punishment.
It's an unwritten punishment, right? And nobody will ever say, "Oh yeah, he got it." You know what I mean?
Right. How does Folsom stack up against San Quentin?
Folsom's totally different. Folsom lifestyle and San Quentin lifestyles were two different lifestyles completely. You have to remember, I mentioned Folsom was 35 and older.
Right.
Okay. San Quentin, although they had a lot of old people there were young people mixed in.
Right.
I mean, so there was movement and things like that. Folsom, though, it was an older population.
What does that mean? Like, what happened?
How do I explain? They used to call Folsom the snake pit. You know what I mean? Because when you went into Folsom, you knew you were going to be around people that were motivated to get over. And their motivation was finding somebody to get over on.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And why would they be motivated there for that?
It's just they were older. That was their lifestyle. They were already entrenched into a lifestyle that most people were still learning.
Seasoned convicts.
So although you had seasoned convicts at San Quentin, the population wasn't that
large.
So is it that at Folsom they were seasoned, but they also knew that they probably weren't going anywhere, so to improve their life or whatever, they got to find somebody to get over?
I don't know. I don't know if that was the case. It wasn't. I don't think that was the case. I did time in Folsom twice.
Yeah.
I was sent to Folsom 2 times.
How long did you spend there?
The first time I went to Folsom, I was shipped out of San Quentin because of a hunger strike. They came, they gaffled me up in the middle of the night, threw me in a van in a cage, and drove me to Folsom at 3 a.m.
Damn.
And I woke up the following morning, I was in the hole. And I only stayed there about 5 months.
Okay.
And they told me, hey, if you want to go back to San Quentin, we'll send you. So I went back.
Right.
Can I ask you what year that was, Jack?
Yeah, I went to Folsom in...
during the strikes, the poo strikes.
That was in 1982, I believe. 82 or 83, right before the June
I was there.
19.
That's why I was asking. I was in East Block at the time that was going on.
Okay, so
they shipped half of us out. They just started shipping people on buses like crazy.
I was in at that time. I was in West Block, and they came up into my cell and took me down to R&R, and put me in one of those vans that don't have no windows. It's like a delivery truck.
Sure.
Right,
But inside this delivery truck, they had a whole bunch of cages. And they just put me in one of those, and we took off. I didn't know where I was going until we got to where we was going.
What were the hunger strikes about?
Just the treatment, the ridiculous treatment we were getting.
The food we were, was well. Actually, I always liked the food at San Quentin, and the food at Folsom was also great too back in those days.
Right. Well, like, what would they serve you?
Oh man, you know what? You have breakfast. The
food was good.
The food was good. You'd have a whole line of food, and it wasn't a matter of whether you got enough or not. You get what you want. The guys served you on the line. You know what I mean? So you tell the guy, give me some extra eggs. They give you some extra eggs.
Because
you know
Steve and Big Lepke tell stories about food that just sound awful.
Well,
Yeah, there was. But there was also places like, and items like, you could get at Chino, they were famous for having these roscas.
Yeah.
Like these huge
Big
cinnamon
ones.
rolls. You might go to like Tehachapi and they got this little hard brick tiny cinnamon roll. But at Chino, they got the big cinnamon roll.
Right.
And they weren't stingy. Some prisons are very you're barely getting any food. In some prisons, they would give you a lot.
Yeah.
And you're like, man, and people for us that were locked down would be like, oh, they feed you good here. Or they feed you good here.
Because Big Lep's always
talking
talking about dragon meat and
Dragon tongue.
Dragon tongue, yeah.
And then juke balls.
Oh yeah, I can tell you what that was about. If you don't remember, in June 19th of 1982, there was a huge riot at San Quentin.
Yeah.
You remember that?
I was there.
Yeah, and and we were locked down for like 22 months.
Okay.
That's what the food strikes were about, because they wouldn't every time we'd go to chow. Let's say you lived on the 5th tier, and they would try to run a hot meal. Someone got stabbed. That's just the way it was. And if you lived below there, you weren't getting a meal. You were getting a hot meal.
So the riots were about that.
They were about being the lockdown was just ridiculously too long. They were taking people's personal property. It was just crazy the way they were treating us.
What would they feed you if you were on lockdown?
Oh, they fed
Sack lunches.
They had a tier tender. Sometimes they'd have a tier tender. Each tier had a hot card on it, and they would pull somebody out. When I was on, and what my experience was, they'd pull somebody out, and you would walk down. You would serve the cart. You would serve people as you went down, and everybody got served hot food. That's how we would eat.
Right.
And that went on for just forever, dude. It's like we were never going to get off lockdown.
Yeah.
And that's what it was about.
Gentleman Jack, what was the worst thing you ever ate in prison?
There was a Thanksgiving meal they gave us.
Of course.
And they literally gave us a big old
The bone.
chicken. No, it was a big old chicken leg.
Yeah.
But when you bit into it, there was maggots in it.
Oh God.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's horrible.
That is terrible.
That was
I remember they fed us ribs one time. These big ribs. You remember that?
Yeah.
And they made a mistake.
What do you mean?
Because their people were the
Human
bones didn't come
the
back.
bones are.
People were making knives out of them, so they panicked.
Yeah. So let me ask you this,
True
Jack.
story.
You're
Damn.
when do you start picking up?
He's laughing. That's a true story, though.
I know it is. That's just crazy.
So from what we've heard, and you're gonna explain to us, you started picking up, I guess, you start picking up write-ups. You start getting into trouble. Do they start obviously they start sending you to ad seg, but somewhere in this you start picking up shoe terms?
In 1983, or about 82, right after the riots, they start to modify the way the institutions in California are ran.
That's what I want.
And they realize that large open institutions are something they just cannot handle. After the riots in 1982 at San Quentin kicked off, I mean, you had to be there. I was right there, and they literally walked out on the catwalk with one of those 50 caliber machine guns. They were about to spray the whole damn yard. You know what I mean? And they were shooting so much that I was up there choking from the damn smoke in the air. You know what I mean? People were just, and this is not just on the upper yard. It was every block,
Everywhere.
down in the work area, down on the yards, lower yard, anywhere and everywhere. Simultaneously, it went off. You know what
You
I
got to
mean?
remember, guys, the United States on a whole, right? State prisons are basically being run in a similar fashion. But what's happening in California is very different than what's happening outside of California.
What would make that the case? Why?
California, like most states, is a leader. That includes the prison system. The prison system is looked at in California as one of the most notorious prison systems.
Right.
And when it was big prisons like San Quentin and Fulsom and DVI and Soledad that were open, they had little control over it. But after the riots in 82, they realized they could not have prisons like that no more. So
Right.
everything started getting built in sections.
There was no inmates organizing at this type of a level.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, there was
Yeah.
There was no everybody's loosely the blacks, but in California, these people were organizing prison gangs within prison.
Yeah, so they started to things were starting to get political in the free world. It was in the mid 60s, late 60s,
Right.
early 70s.
Civil rights.
Right. All these things were starting to get political.
Right.
Well, those people that were getting swept up on the streets were being sent to the prison systems.
Got it.
So now they were not only politically incarcerated for their beliefs, but now they were being suppressed. And when you suppress somebody, there's only two ways to work it. You either succumb to that suppression or you oppose it.
Right.
And once you start to oppose it, that means you start to utilize resources and actions that are detrimental to those that want to suppress you.
Right.
You know what I mean? Resistance. That was what's starting to happen in the California prison system. Right?
Man.
So they started building prisons that were sectioned off. They could close off a section and keep another section going.
Mass organization, and never again are we going to have a huge fucking crowd.
Never again. In fact, we started going. When I went to the hole, when I finally made it to Pelican Bay had 12 blocks, and in those blocks, each block had 6 pods, and inside those pods, each pod had 8 cells, and that was it.
Right.
If that cell came open in one of those pods, it could not affect any other pod in that block, and it could not affect any other block in that institution. You know what I mean? It was closed off, and the gunner could sit right up there and shoot everybody all day long, and they couldn't do nothing about it because there was nowhere to go.
Right.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't they they've taken Folsom and turned it into a women's institution?
Folsom, San Quentin, Pelican Bay, all these institutions that they built for those purposes are changed. San Quentin is now a level 2 institution,
Right.
and the thing about San Quentin right now, though, is it's COVID impacted. There are people dying at
Right.
San
I've
Quentin
heard
left
that.
and right. Okay?
Right.
Folsom is now level 2, and there were women at Folsom.
That's what I heard.
And Pelican Bay Security Housing Unit, or the SHU, which was infamous throughout the United States, is now a level 2 institution with murals on the walls.
Are you serious? I did not hear that. I didn't know that, Jack. Wow, that's a notorious prison right there.
So they start sentencing you to shoot. They give you your first shoot term.
In 1986, I was in Solano prison, and they locked me up for organizing an assault on northern prisoners. That night they came, they put me on a bus and sent me to San Quentin. When I was at San Quentin, I was in the hole, and it was 1986. And at that point in time, they gave me an indeterminate shoot term, which meant that they're going to put me in solitary confinement until they decided that they would let me out.
So that indeterminate shoe term, where did they send you for that? Was that in?
At that time, they didn't have all the other prisons built yet. So my indeterminate shoot term was at San Quentin. I was sent to the adjustment center. They had me housed. They had me housed with the people that were on death row.
So what is it like to be housed with people that are on death row? What did you learn from
It was
that?
the same people I knew.
Right. But but is there something different about a guy who knows he's on death row? Is there a different just knowing that at some point it's probably going to end for you? Does that change anything about it?
I mean, at that time you have to understand we were living a disciplined life. Everything we did was designed to harden us,
right?
To build our character and to prepare us for whatever may be put in front of us or placed upon us.
Right.
So,
like a soldier.
Absolutely.
But as you know, Jack, that's what started the mass debriefings.
Yeah.
Was they would give you a indeterminate shoe program, and they would tell you you're either going to die, debrief, or parole.
What's debrief?
You give up information on whoever it is you run with.
Got it. And this is why we're saying you necessarily can't judge a person because everybody's got a point break.
I've seen a lot of guys. I mean, it was what they were using was a tactic that they actually used in the military against enemy combatants.
Right.
And they were subjecting you to sensory deprivations.
Yeah.
Now, we're humans. Humans have to have physical contact to exist, verbal contact, emotional,
Not Sean. Sean's
emotional
part machine.
contact.
He doesn't need to talk to anybody. He's an isolator.
He works with electronics.
Yeah, exactly.
there you go.
He's got electrodes coming out of the base of his neck.
But you put somebody in a cell, like I said, the shoe in Pelican Bay, there was no windows.
Right.
You see nothing of outside.
Right.
Hell, when we got there, they wouldn't even allow us to see California TV. They
Yeah.
allowed us to watch only Denver channels.
What?
Yeah.
Weird.
It was so isolated that everything you owned was in a paper bag or a paper cup. Your pin filler was removed from the pin case, and you were issued the pin filler.
Right.
You know what I mean? Your soap was cut in half. You know what I mean?
It got so bad at Pelican Bay that people were, if you had a cellie,
Yeah.
some people didn't. Some people were housed alone,
Single
housed
man
alike.
cell, right.
Yeah. So, but what they were doing, people were conniving ways to get someone they wanted to kill moved into their cell. They were having murders in cells.
happened
there.
all the time.
It was crazy.
And they even take the staples out of your
Yeah,
paperwork.
It was insane.
Imagine that.
I mean, yeah, somebody left the fucking bones in the ribs in some other prison and they made a bunch of fucking weapons.
Dude, I don't know if you know this, but you can in California. Then a lot of those places they ban styrofoam cups because
Why?
you can make a
Melt
weapon
them
out of
down.
them. Melt them. If
melt
you
them
take
down
a
and make
comb and a styrofoam cup and melt them together,
Yeah.
you can kill somebody with it.
Yeah.
So, what's the longest run you had in a solitary situation, Gentleman Jack?
What do you mean?
Like, how long did you spend in solitary at one time?
I went to solitary confinement. Well, I started going in 1982, but in 1986, they put me in solitary confinement, and they didn't let me out until 2016.
Dude.
What?
We haven't had anybody on the show that's said that.
Imagine that, what
or
that's like.
experienced that.
And
so
that
how many
wasn't the
years is that,
longest.
Jack? How long?
That wasn't the longest. I mean, there was guys in there. I mean, there was a handful of us, and I say this, there was a handful of us that had spent, 40 years in solitary confinement.
Some are still there.
And some are still there.
All right, hold on a
Dude,
second. Let's go back to Steve's question. How long was that? 30 years? How long was that?
It was about 20-something years.
Right.
Yeah, I don't even know exactly. I
Okay.
went in. I know the date I went in.
Yeah.
No, let me correct that. I know the date I was given indeterminate term. I was already in the hole.
Right.
But I picked up a stabbing in the hole, so they changed my sentence from 15 months to 24 months, and at that point, they never let me out no more.
Okay, so you're in the hole, and first of all, how do you? This might be a naive question, but how do you stab somebody in the hole?
Very
Hard.
quickly.
It's not hard. It's not hard, dude. You can do it.
And you're right under a gun. So you know when you're going to do something like that. When I stabbed this guy, the gunner was from here to the bathroom door right there, which is probably, 10 feet?
Yeah.
10, 15
yeah,
feet?
15.
Yeah. So he was up on a gun rail, and I was right below him, and I started assaulting this guy.
Right. And did you have to? You knew what was going to happen. Did
yeah.
you? And sometimes guys we've had on the show, they've said like, "Yeah, I had to mentally prepare myself." I mean, was it like that for you, or you followed, you knew what you were going to do, or
it's all you always have to prepare yourself.
Right.
I mean, you get butterflies in your stomach. You feel. I have never met anybody that has just walked out there
Yeah.
and just hey, have a good time, Joe. I'm going to go
Yeah.
kill this guy.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And
feel
keep
it.
in mind, I want to say this: what a lot of people to make it really real.
Yeah.
Is you remember when they took the shotguns out?
Yeah.
In 1989, they took which they used to use birdshot. They don't stop nothing. People continue to.
Yeah.
Some of the stab, they don't stop.
right?
So your adrenaline's running so high.
I mean,
you don't-
the vice president Dick Cheney shot some guy in the face with birdshot, and he survived.
So what that tells you what happens. When guys
Right.
stabbing somebody, they're not stopping, dude.
Right.
Bec-
So what guns did
so
they give him?
Now
They
they're taking the Koch.
They actually changed the guns 3 times.
Oh, they have they since then. But
Yeah,
remember,
well-
there was those times it was the 9mm they brought in. That
Well, no,
assault weapon.
They changed. What they did is they took the birdshot,
Right.
Okay, and they
Oh, the double buck.
They changed it into that that rifle that had the shells like this.
The Mini 14.
Mini 14.
Mini 14. That's what they use in Vietnam.
But when they shoot people in those yards, they're right there. Can you imagine a guy shooting you with the Mini 14 from that door?
It bounced back and ricochet.
It goes through you.
Right.
So what was happening is going through people and hitting somebody else next, behind them or to the side of them.
Whoops.
So they took those guns out and they brought in what they called the 9mm
The little 9mm assault rifle.
glazier shell.
Right.
And a glazier shell, when it's shot, spins.
Right.
So when it hits you, it spares up, just blows up inside of you.
Right.
So the shell just goes all up in you without exiting your body.
Man.
And
It's a
that
horrible
was a,
place
that
to
was
be,
a
dude.
tough
It really
bullet
is.
right there. It's not a big bullet, but it's a
But
dangerous
the fatality rate was very high. You get shot in the hip.
Yeah, it'll blow you
All the
all
organs get hit.
Right, exactly.
So, okay, so you get this. So now they say it's an indeterminate. And, eventually it seems like you spent over 20-something years. So what is it that people don't understand or won't be able to understand about what it means to do solitary for that long? What happens to a human?
There was this guy I met. His name is Rick Ramish. He was the director of the Department of Corrections in Colorado. You may recall this incident. The former director was out on the streets, and a guy that was in his confinements came out, hunted this guy down, and assassinated him.
Yeah, I remember
Yeah.
that.
You know what I mean? And Rick Ramish took over that man's position. Now, anybody in their right mind would have went bull wild and just locked everything down because he wants to save his life.
Right.
But he did the opposite. And he began to eliminate solitary confinement throughout the Department of Corrections in Denver, Colorado. And the way he did it is he went and locked himself in solitary confinement.
You lost me there.
Have you ever seen Blue Baker? The movie
Yeah,
Blue
yeah,
Baker?
Robert Redford.
With Robert Redford, he sneaks into the prison as a prisoner. And he's seeing everything that's happening in the prison as a prisoner.
Undercover.
And then finally he steps out and says, I'm the warden of this prison.
That's a true story.
Right.
And this is what's going on, and this is what's going to change. Well, Rick Ramish put himself in a solitary confinement cell, and within 12 hours, he banged on the door and told him, open it up, let me out. No human being can stand this.
Right. Right. So that was unusual, strange, and unusual punishment. But so what happens? Okay, so I understand that, but you survived it.
Well,
Rick Ramish pounded on the door to get the fuck out. You're not able to do that.
you have to understand, when I went in, I was still rambunctious.
Right.
I was still defiant. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was having fun.
I was a 20-year-old still. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And when I went in there, it was a matter of not being beaten by those that wanted to beat me.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So that gave you some fuel being defiant.
Right. It
for a
gave
while.
me the hatred and the fire in my soul to try to outlast
Okay.
what was being given
All
to
right,
me.
so let's walk through this. This is great because there's a lot of people get very far in life on that hunger that you're talking about, right? So how long does that carry you? And tell us at what point, if it did, maybe it never did it ever change where you were like, what the fuck am I doing?
Yeah. So when you're doing solitary time,
Yeah.
and as it was mentioned, people were killing their cellies.
Yeah.
So they stopped giving people cellies.
Right.
They said, okay,
Right.
everybody's going to live in this cell by themselves forever.
Right.
Okay. At some point in time, the things that you do to keep sane, and I did legal work. I became very proficient in legal work.
In the law.
I became proficient with art. I read a lot. I exercised a lot. I meditated. I did everything you can in order to exercise your mind.
Right.
But one time I was writing, and I wrote 2 books. Okay,
What were they about?
Pelican Bay.
All right, 2 books.
2, I didn't know it was 2. Wow.
All right, 2 books.
So
You've done everything you fucking can.
I wrote a poem, and I realized when I wrote this poem, I had to change who I was, because it's talking about me being defiant. It was talking about me being at battle, being at war with those that had put me in confinement. what I thought was those who put me in confinement.
Right.
But I put myself in confinement, and I kept myself in confinement. You understand these things later in life. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I wrote this poem, and I talked about how I battled and how I was winning. And then I wrote in this poem that I had fought fiercely and was victorious. And then I realized I had consumed my own identity. I had killed myself because the only person I was battling with was me. You know? So I was victorious, but in that battle, I had lost.
Had you finished the poem and then you were rereading it and realized this next step for you?
Yes. Yeah.
How much of a mind blower was that?
Well, I don't know if if it's a mind blower. It's a matter of trying to survive. When you realize that the reality that you're living is not a true reality,
Right.
Anymore. I'm going to say that. It's not a true reality anymore.
What does that mean?
That means the reality you were living up to that point was absolutely reality. That is what you were living, and that's what got you to that point.
Right.
But it's at that point you realize you can't use that reality anymore to get you any further. What new reality do you have to develop in order to continue to survive in the environment that you're still in?
To continue to operate.
To continue to work, yeah. So I had to change,
So you're in this cell. You've done everything to keep your mind occupied. You come to a point where you write this poem and it's about victory. And then all of a sudden you realize you've gone as far as you're probably going to be able to go under that mindset, and something has to change.
I learned I had to stop hating.
Damn.
Mm-hmm. Because if you hate, I'm going to tell you right now, when you hate and you're in a box by yourself, the only person that feels that hatred is you.
Right.
Those guards don't care about you.
Right.
Nobody outside your cell gives a damn about you.
Right.
You know what I mean? You're living that world. You're living that existence by yourself.
Right.
You know what I mean? And if you're killing yourself with hatred, the only way to stay alive is to learn not how to hate. So that was my new process. I had to try to learn how not to hate.
How hard is it to have the kind of the hatred that you were feeling that got you all the way to that point? How hard is it then to start learning how not to?
Oh, it's night and day. I mean, it's like you write with your right hand, but you got to learn to do it with your left.
Right.
You know what I mean? Your existence, everything you know, everything you've ever built upon, everything you've ever thought about, all your dreams was that reality.
Right.
And then you have to realize, I can't survive with that reality no more.
So
I have to create something different.
What steps did you take?
Well, I started reading books on a meditation, and I try to find books on self-help in order to try to change the way I thought. How do I say this? We are what we think.
Totally.
So in my lifetime, I have killed thousands and thousands of people.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if I was placed in the position, it would just be another person I would kill. I would react natural to that because that was what I was training to do.
Right.
So I had to stop training to do that. I had to figure out a way to be something different than that. I had to figure out a way of not hurting people, and that in turn will relate to me not hurting myself. Because every time I did somebody dirty or did somebody wrong or became I victimized somebody else, that only meant I was harming myself.
You know, it's weird. It's great that you say that. And I think a lot of people intellectually, right, if you were to say that to most people, they would understand what you're saying. Yet, I feel like most people don't really act that way. I feel like most people, even though they think they understand that lesson that you said, you hurt somebody else, you're actually hurting yourself. Somehow, what is it that people are missing? Why are they able to say it intellectually and yet act differently?
It's like we had spoken earlier. Because we have reached that point, it doesn't mean somebody else has reached that point.
Right.
Okay. What I believe is not what you believe. What I think is not what you think. My job, okay, is to react based on my understanding of what my existence is.
Right.
If I allow you to do something that solicits a reaction from me, then I have relinquished myself to your will.
You've lost control over yourself.
You now control me.
Right.
You know, I knew that now. I that's what I had to change. You know what I mean? I could not allow somebody else's understanding of what their existence was to be reflected on me and have me react as a result of that understanding that the other person has.
Let them dictate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And what? So you said you read some self-help books. Which ones stand out for you?
There's this one book I read, and it was recently a movie, but I didn't see the movie, and I wouldn't. You know, when you read a book and you see a movie, they're different. You
Two
always,
different things.
always read the book. The reason I say read the book is because it's your mind that fills in what is the story.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
If it says a tree, it's your perception of what that tree looks like.
Sure.
You know, so you could develop it in your way. I read a book. It's a spiritual book. It's called The Shack.
All right.
And The Shack talks about a guy who kidnapped, molested, and killed this little girl. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a horrific beginning to this book, and it's an act that is just, to some, is just absolutely forgivable. You know what I mean? This
Right.
person has no redeemable qualities whatsoever. But what was interesting about the book is God manifests himself in the form of a black, heavy-set woman.
All right.
And she's addressing the father's journey through his grief. Okay? And it's within this setting that I learned a new perspective on life.
Which was?
That to understand or to forgive are two different things. It's not necessarily important for me to understand what you've experienced, because if I could forgive without understanding of that, then I'm forgiving you just because you're human.
Right.
You know, there was a passage in the book that says, and I when you guys were talking earlier today about love,
Right.
he says, when you're born, you are filled with all the love you're ever going to need in your life for everybody. You're going to love everybody the same, because love does not diminish or increase. What diminishes and increases is your understanding of that person. So the more you say, I love you more today than yesterday, no, you don't. You love the person equally. You just understand them more today.
So what you're saying is that Rachel Sterling doesn't understand very many people.
Well, I don't know. Maybe her understanding of what love is.
Don't cross him up, dog. You don't cross him up.
it was
I didn't
good.
hear-
He was asking. He listened to what we were talking about.
I
and
heard
he was
some
talking
of
about
it.
love. Right.
I heard some of it. I can't comment on it because I came in late and I didn't hear
Of course,
that.
you're a gentleman.
Didn't
I'm
hear the-
a cad. I'm just adding a little levity to what we're talking about. But I understand what you're saying. You're saying that the capacity to love when you're born is
It's instilled in all of us.
right. And you're saying, like, in terms of when you decide or how you show that to other people or what you can feel is really the level to which you understand them.
Right, exactly. Because if you can have somebody that you say, I love this person, and you can have somebody that says, I hate this person. Well, that's not the truth. You hate what this person did, their reactions, their nature, whatever they've done. And you like this person more because you like what they've done, their nature and what they've done.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's not a matter of I love you or hate you more, or I love you or love you less. It's a matter of I understand you more and I don't understand you at all.
Right. So based on what you're saying, and in the book is The Shack, is the author's William Paul Young?
Yes.
Okay, so because we got listeners always want to know what the books are. So okay, so you can get that. So I have to ask this then. So you spent that much time away, and you come back. And when did they let you go?
Let you go what? Out of the shoe?
Out of everything. Because he's talking about love, and there's a little bit between the shoe and getting out. But I guess I want to get to now you're learning all this, and then you come back to Norwalk or the United States, whatever it is, and it's a completely, I got to believe that even now, today, when you look at what's going on outside, and we're talking about love and understanding, I got to believe that you on some level are looking at the current situation and saying to yourself, man, things are really mixed up.
I'm not.
You're not?
No, I'm not.
I'm surprised. Why?
Because it's like I told you, the actions of somebody else no longer reflect, no longer dictate the way I react.
Right.
A lot of times, I was in a room, we were talking about the law.
Right.
And somebody says, what happens to see people that smoke marijuana? And this was before marijuana was legalized, okay?
Right.
And they asked the people, what do you think should happen? And everybody in that room moved to one side saying nothing should happen to this person. And I moved to the other side. So I'm the only person standing in this room on the other side, and they're all looking at me. And I said, hey, marijuana is illegal. If you smoke it, there are ramifications for your actions.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's a matter of taking the responsibilities for those actions. Now, other people are doing things. That doesn't mean I oppose what they believe in or accept what they believe in. But I respect the fact that they have something to do, to believe in, a direction in their life.
Right.
And I do not judge a person because their decisions or their beliefs or their actions conflict with mine.
Interesting. So do you, so let's go back then. I just wanted to.
If they conflict.
They might not conflict.
They may not.
Right. So at the end of your shoe term, right, and you'd spent 20 some odd years, what was the main difference in you from going in?
Well, first of all, I was classified as a gang member. I was classified as a gang associate, and then when it was convenient, I was classified as a gang member. And then when we did the hunger strikes, and the hunger strikes were historical. I mean,
what year are we talking about on the?
With the first hunger strike, I was in Pelican Bay. I just got back from the shoe in Tehachapi, and it was July the 1st, 2011, and hunger strike started. And
massive all over the state, right?
At this time, no, there was only about 6,000 people involved, or counted, indicated.
Right.
You know what I mean? But I remember it distinctly in that the Department of Corrections was trying to break it because on July 4th, they literally rolled in carts into the blocks and into the pods that had ice cream and chocolate milk and watermelon, hot dogs, hamburgers, all this stuff. And they literally said, whoever wants all they want, it's here.
God.
So let me tell you something,
bro.
Yeah, take us right.
When you're
paint
in
the
prison,
picture.
bro,
Paint the picture, Steve.
When you're in prison, man, you're especially in a shoe environment. You're starving all the time. You have conversations through your vent, and you may spend hours talking about things you ate and what you and so like it's you can't really explain what them flashing all this food and saying all you can eat.
Right.
You don't have that experience in prison.
After
That
not
doesn't
eating
happen.
for 3 days.
And then tell me this:
they're not eating.
So what happens if you break? Tell them what happens if you break and start eating.
Well, I have to admit, a lot of people did. But here's the thing that was unique about the hunger strikes. The hunger strikes were not mandatory. Okay, a lot of times these things were mandatory, but we started to realize, this is not a mandatory thing. You either want to get out and contribute to it, or you don't. And if you contribute, contribute in the manner in which you're capable of contributing.
Right.
This was the ideology of what was taking place.
Right.
So a lot of people are not. But the Department of Corrections came and they said, we're going to give you guys what you're looking for, what you're asking for. Because what we were asking for was not unnatural, unusual. We were looking for the opportunity to educate ourselves so we can gain parole. We were looking for the opportunity to not to be punished as a result of the acts of somebody else.
Right.
Okay? We were looking for the opportunity to be fed. Decent food. That's it. Because the food you got, you could not literally not lose weight if you did not have a means to purchase items out of the canteen. You would absolutely lose weight because the meals were that bad.
Right. All right, here's the thing, guys. The show's about getting centered and grounded. And one of the things that we need to talk about is our sponsor, Botany Farms. Right? Botany Farms, they hand curate, they micro grow. I don't know how you do it more focused than that. This is the best thing that you can do if you want to get yourself centered, grounded, have better sleep. Steve and I obviously are sober, but the one who isn't is old Blue Eyes. Yeah. What is it that you noticed? Did it actually help you?
Yes. Usually I stay up late at night doing all my editing. And
Right.
sometimes it's hard to fall asleep because I've been on the computer.
Yeah, all that blue light fucks
Right.
with your sleep. It
Right.
suppresses melatonin, actually.
Right.
So then what did you do? You tried the Botany Farms?
Dude, I tried this sour space candy
Yeah. Did it help you sleep?
like a baby.
All natural, organically grown, non-GMO ingredients, no pesticides, no fungicides, straight up natural. www.botanyfarms.com. Don't forget promo code LUCKY17, 25% off your first order. They believe in the show, so you believe in them. Boom. Let's have GJ Muggs smoke some of this shit.
And we were asking to end confidential information utilizing unsubstantiated or undocumented sources to place somebody in the security housing on an indeterminate term.
Right.
Example, Blue Eyes.
Yeah.
So they say Blue Eyes is a gang member and I think he's selling drugs. That was enough to put you in solitary confinement indeterminately. That means solitary confinement forever.
So
Let me
are you
tell you-
saying another inmate could say
Yeah.
that about
Yes.
me?
Oh yeah.
I
Yes.
mean, you're saying that that inmate wouldn't be identified and it wouldn't be
Oh, no,
substantiated.
no. Let me tell
There
you
was
this.
no-
So
Here's-
you wouldn't
here's-
even necessarily know if an inmate actually had or had said
There you
anything.
go.
That's the
it.
point.
Here's
That's
here's
it.
another sick aspect of this.
Go ahead.
It's his birthday. It's old Blue Eyes' birthday.
Okay.
I signed his birthday card. I'm not a gang member, but we know each other. So out of respect, I signed his birthday card. That is enough to get me indeterminate shoe program and become classified as a gang member. That's all it takes.
Yeah. And that's because Blue Eye was in the hole already.
Right.
And you communicated with him.
And you
That's it.
communicated.
That's
with
all
him.
it takes, bro.
So this is so you have a few things that you guys are fighting for.
Right.
There's a number of things
Well,
there.
so the Department of Corrections said they're going to give us this stuff, and the hunger strike ends. Okay, and we wait, and we wait, and they don't do it. So okay, we're going to do another hunger strike. This time we're going to do it July 8th. We're going to start it because July 4th, the food issue
It's good. You want to get that.
You know what I
It's
mean?
a holiday.
So we're not going to do it again
gotta carve
until
up.
July 8th.
You ain't
time to
dummies.
digest.
But of course, that following year, that food issue wasn't prevented. You know,
Right.
and that wasn't happening.
So
July 8th
did they walk into your cell? Were you on a hunger strike and they walked into your cell with a fucking just aroma hamburger?
They rolled the cart into the pod. Remember how I told you the pods were set up?
Yeah.
Okay. Each pod door was opened. A couple guards rolled food carts into there,
and you can smell this.
and you could see it and smell it.
And
they
you're
said,
on a
"Oh,
hunger
no."
strike.
Yeah.
How
Most-
long had it been since you-
3 days.
3 days.
Yeah.
And tell me, like internally, like physically, what's going on with your body when you smell that
Oh,
good food?
you know, what do you try not eating one day? What do you feel? You know what I mean? You smell.
Right.
You're driving down the street and you smell burgers.
right,
You know what I mean?
right. All that shit's heightened.
Yeah. But not do it. Now, this is just the beginning. So the second one, we have 12,000 prisoners participate.
Right.
And they tell us, okay, we're going to meet your demands. And they give us a handball and a beanie cap. And we're out on the yards like that Pong game. You know what I mean? You hit the ball and it just bounces all over the walls because you're single cell. So you can only throw the ball so many times and it bounces all over the wall and you say, the hell with that shit. You know what I mean? And that's what it was. And they gave us a beanie because in Northern California, on the California-Oregon border, the weather
It's cold
is
as fuck.
cold as hell.
Yeah.
60 degrees is a warm day.
Right.
You know
So
what I
a
mean?
beanie and a rubber ball is supposed to fix things.
That's what was supposed to fix things. You know what I mean?
damn.
Now, this is how the department works. You know what I mean? In the meantime, there's people inside the joint. The men that are doing these hunger strikes are saying, this is not equating to anything. I'm not doing this no more. The hell with this. You know what I mean?
Right. They're wearing you out.
Right. But the other men, for the third strike, and I have to tell you this, and I'm absolutely proud and honored to say this. On the third strike, I was asleep in the morning, and a friend of mine named Bob, we call him Baby Bob, he yelled up to me. It was 5:30 in the morning, and he says, "Hey, Indio, you have your TV on?" And I said, "No." He says, "Turn it on and look at the bottom line on the news." And I did, and it said right there on the ticker tape, 30,000 California prisoners on hunger
Yeah,
strike.
it got big.
Wow.
30,000.
And this is spread out through multiple prisons,
Yeah.
right?
Not only multiple prisons, I literally seen on the news, on the wall in Israel, written, somebody wrote on the wall, "We support Pelican Bay hunger strike."
Right.
It was worldwide.
A third of the population was involved.
Worldwide.
That's what globalization
And
has done.
the law representatives here in California, our assembly and senators, finally said, why are these guys in solitary confinement for 40 years?
Right.
What did they do? Who did they
Yeah.
kill?
Yeah.
Well, they didn't kill no one, but they're gang members.
Yeah.
Well, what the hell does that got to do with putting somebody in solitary confinement for 40 years?
Right.
You know what I mean? And that was the beginning. And it was because family members, the females of the men's in jail, the families, their children, their wives, their girlfriends were protesting out on the streets. There's this lady named Dolores Canales.
Mm-hmm.
She organized community-based organizations to develop programs to fight solitary confinement. They called her up into Washington, D.C. I mean, she was walking around with a bullhorn.
Right.
You know what I mean? And carrying pictures and family members and little kids with their father's picture on it or their uncle's pictures on it. And it took effect. It affected all of the United States. The United States Supreme Court handed down a case saying juveniles cannot be placed in solitary confinement no more.
Right.
The UN master against torture came out and says, you guys are torturing Californians for having them in solitary confinement for more than 15 days. Dolores pointed out when she was at the market, she was reading a box of eggs, and it says the chickens that lay these eggs have to be in humane conditions.
Right.
But prisoners, California human beings, did not have to be subjected to that same humane condition.
Right.
You know what I mean? Right now, she's up in Chickawawa. And I was going to go there.
Women's prison.
Women's
Chickawawa.
prison.
Mhm.
And they're protesting in 101 heat because they're subjecting the women to COVID. And they're locked down and they have no air conditioning systems. They have swamp coolers.
I read that not only that, but in other states, like in Tulsa, I think it was, that the guards or the warden was not allowing any of the prisoners to wear masks or to take any COVID protections, and that they were being exposed to COVID. And just recently, this morning, there's the prisoners in California, all that fire and smoke is dangerously close to them, and they're getting all kinds of inhalation problems, and they're not doing anything about it.
Yeah. You hear, there's a lot of things that people don't hear about the prison system. Like the prison system in Central California, it is bad for old people. It has a airborne disease that enters into the breathing system
Right.
and will kill you.
Right.
So California says, okay, if you're old, you don't have to go in there. And it affects predominantly people of color. You know what
Right.
I mean, but there's a lot of different things. I mean, prison is not a good place. I mean, that's what we're here talking about, right?
Right.
I mean, it's a situation that is difficult at the very least to survive. The problem is when you're in prison, you have to not only survive, but at some point in time, you have to convince them that you've conformed, and you conformed to what they believe is what is needed to survive and thrive in a community without being opposed to the norms of that community.
So take us through then at that point in time after these, after the protests and everything else. So at some point in time, how do you then convince them you've conformed and you get out?
When we were in the security housing unit, the hunger strikes, the law people, the Assembly and Senate finally had hearings, and they were exposed. The Department of Corrections was exposed to the voracious nature of their confinements.
Right.
And they said, no, close it down. Get those men out of the SHU. You cannot have them in the SHU. There's people in there that have been in there more than 40 years.
Right.
You know? And so they said, they came up to our cells one day and they said, we're closing the hole.
What did that feel like? What did that feel like when they told you?
Wait, hold on. Back up a minute. What number strike was this on?
That was the third hunger strike.
The third hunger strike. And how long did this hunger strike last before they showed up to come to the table?
So let me put it in perspective. Are you guys familiar with the name Bobby Sands?
I am.
No.
Ireland.
So Bobby Sands was from Ireland, and he was protesting the fact that England was on their territory or something like that.
Yeah, it was the Protestants and the Catholics. It was the British were in their homeland.
So there was 10 of them that went on a hunger strike, and within 44 days, I think they all died.
Yeah, he died. He was the first one, I think, to die.
So what happened in Pelican Bay is they got together, and over a couple years it took, and they read these books, and the guys in there decided, you know what, we're fighting these guys with animosity in our hearts.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And we're bumping walls. And they build walls thicker and more isolated, and we can't even yell no more. You know what I mean? We have to find another way. So a consensus was established, and they said, you know what? Bobby Sands and these guys went on hunger strike.
Right.
You know what? We're gonna die in here. We all knew that. We knew there was 3 ways out. Like Ryan said, debrief, die, or parole. You can't parole when you're in the SHU because you're a lifer, okay? And you're not going to debrief, or at least you hope you're not going to debrief. That's your hope. I'm not going to debrief. So the only option was to die. And the understanding was, hey, if we're going to die, at least let's die fighting.
Right.
You know what I mean?
For
but
a cause.
we can't fight normally. We can't fight hand and fist because there's only 8 of us that live in a pod, and they could sit up there and shoot us all day.
Right.
So we have to fight in another way. And that way was a hunger strike.
Right.
And we decided to go on a hunger strike, the third one. Men were on that hunger strike first week, second week, third week, a month, 59 days. People did not. I saw people go into a place where they were 230 pounds, and when I seen them again, they were unrecognizable.
Right.
You know what I mean? They were sucked up, skin and bone.
Right.
You know what I mean? People were falling out, and when people were taken to the hospital because they could no longer stand and they just drop on their floor. They were taken down to the hospital, and the hospital personnel with the guards told them, we'll revive you. We'll give you intravenous liquids to bring your body back to life if you sign this paper and say you won't continue the hunger strike. And they said, no, I'll die. So what the next step of the department was let's go to court. Let's get a court order from the federal judge so we could stick plastic tubes down these guys' throats and force food into their bellies.
Right.
You know what I mean? And when that didn't happen, and when it was about to start, they got everybody that was still on the hunger strike. We're talking almost 60 days later, and they loaded them onto buses, and they shipped them from Pelican Bay. They drove 6 hours with these men on buses down to Folsom State Prison and put them in cells by themselves. And they said they're no longer in Pelican Bay. They could stop the hunger strike now. that was what, and then finally the law people got together with the support of the people on the streets, family members, girlfriends and wives, and they got the senators and the assembly people to hold hearings, and they pulled the cover, they pulled the shroud of secrecy off of the Department of Corrections and exposed the brutality of those that were sent to prison as a result of their crime, but they weren't sent to prison to be tortured because of that crime.
Right, cruel and unusual punishment.
Right.
This
And
is
it
where
changed.
where we have a real problem. We've talked about this in the past and Chumahan, you brought up, like, you're sentenced to 10 years, say. But on top of your sentence, now you're sentenced and subjected to, we're taking this from you. You
Right.
can't get visits. So you're being punished over and over and over and over again. And really, when you were read your punishment and your penalties in the court, it said you're going to serve 10 years in prison. It doesn't say that you're going to serve 10 years in prison. You're also not going to get family visits. You're also not going to get the phone. You're also not going to, and it's like, depending on where you're at or what prison guard doesn't like you or what it is, you're going to be repunished and repunished and repunished. And that wasn't part of what you're in prison
That's
for.
not what the sentencing law says.
That's not what the sentencing
That's
law
not what
says.
it says.
And, you know, I was just looking up after you brought up Bobby Sands. I researched it. And Bobby Sands, Irish, right? He was part of the IRA.
Okay.
He died in prison after 66 days on the hunger strike. And you guys were in like day 60 or whatever it was. So you guys were close to that. So the hunger strike does what it needs to do. All right? And you guys are victorious.
For some.
For some.
For most. I to be honest, for most.
Right. And then what happens for you personally?
Well, I was let out of the security housing unit. I was transferred. It was wonderful. I mean, they came up to my cell and they told me, "Hey, we're going to let you out the hole." And this is, after decades of being in there. And of course, I was a poet, so I sat down and I wrote a poem about it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And
what was the poem? What was the nature of the poem?
I called it "Dare to Illuminate," and what it was is I talked about how they beat me and how they tried to twist my mind and how I suffered hallucinations and I was subject to physical and mental abuse, torture.
Yeah.
But then towards the end of the poem, I said, "But I'm alive."
Right.
And you know what? I'm getting out. And now when I get out, I'm going to regenerate and I'm going to build my strength and I'm going to move forward.
You know what's fascinating about what you're saying is that the first poem you wrote was about defiance and being victorious and continuing all the way. And you got to a place where you're like, this type of defiance that I'm expressing here, or this hate, or whatever you want to call it, has gotten me to this shoe program, right? So now I need to figure out something else because I'm really just fighting myself and I'm doing this to myself. So then you do, right? You start the self-help and the shack and the blah, blah, blah. And at some point, you're still in defiance, right? But now you're in defiance with a different strategy for a different purpose.
That's
And
survival.
you write another poem at the end of that, and here you are victorious again. So in some
With
ways,
a different purpose.
yeah. So in some ways, like I'm listening to this, and in some ways, you are in some ways still being defiant, right? But you've changed the style or the purpose in such a way that it's actually working for you now.
Yeah, it's true. That's true. When I got out, my classification was changed too. I got out, they let me out of the hole. It took 7 days to go from Pelican Bay down to Ironwood State Prison, a level 3 in Blythe, California.
Was that like culture shock for you?
Oh, absolutely. But here's the thing. When they let me out the hole, they kept me away from everybody. They kept me in the cage. They kept me single cell, and they said, well, you're still a shoe prisoner until you classified where you're going. But I remember December 25th. That's Christmas, right?
Yes, it is.
December 25th. They have me in a block on my travel from Pelican Bay to Ironwood. They stopped at Tehachapi Prison. And I'm in a single cell. I have nothing. They took everything from me. I'm in a block where they emptied it out. And I remember freezing cold. And I wake up in the morning and I look out a window because they'll have a window in Tehachapi, and it's snowing. And it's Christmas morning, and I caught myself standing there looking at these big snowflakes falling down, and I started singing that Ben Crosby song, "It's a White Christmas."
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
You know what I mean? And I knew I was out of the shoe. I was out of solitary confinement, and I was going to a place where I was not going to be subjected to that mental torture anymore. You know?
Right.
Now,
That's amazing. So you were able to take total pleasure on Christmas morning in a very simple yet beautiful thing, which was, snow coming down. And you started singing, and there he is. Everybody, I'm going to take you now to... Where were you at?
Tehachapi.
Yeah, Tehachapi.
I was singing that. I sounded just like him, too.
There's Gentleman Jack. He's a little bit thinner because he hasn't been eating a lot lately.
Looking his toes.
Yeah, but he's singing and smiling. The guards don't know what the fuck he's so happy about.
There you go.
But he sure does.
And I'm standing in the cell with no clothes on but some shorts.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this.
Shivering.
So this is 20-some odd years later.
Yeah.
You're now... And they're pulling people out of the shoe that have been there a long time, and they're spreading them out to different types of prisons. At this point in time, is your sentencing a life sentence without parole? Is there a date? Do you have a date at this point in time? Do you not have a date?
I had been to the parole board 12 times. No, at that point, I had been to the parole board 11 times. Mm-hmm. I never expected a parole date, so I would go in front of the parole board and just clown them. Because why? It was something to get out the cell.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'd get out the cell and go clown the parole board and go back.
How do you clown a parole board?
I'd show up drunk. You know what I mean? Shit like that. But that's the way I was.
Spit in the face.
And they tell me about debriefing, and I'll tell them, what is that about? Like I didn't know, and they explain it all to me, and I tell them, no, it's all right. You do whatever
tell
you
me
can.
more. What exactly? How does that work?
Yeah, debrief. What do you mean?
They spend an hour explaining it to you.
But that's the things you do. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's different. But I got to the and the last parole board I had went to, they denied me 10 years. So I didn't have.
Marcy
to me,
law.
it was 10 years. 10 years could have been 50 years. It could have been 1 year. Still wasn't going to make a difference. Right. But when I got to Ironwood, which was in Blythe, a guy tells me, why don't you file for an advanced hearing? And I said, I'm never going to get out, But we're in the general prison population.
Do you really believe in your heart of hearts? Do you really believe in your heart of hearts? Are you convinced that you're not getting out?
Oh yeah, I was through. There's no reason. 10 years was nothing to me.
That's how that's what they convinced you to have a license back then.
Yeah, that's the game,
Okay.
But this guy convinced me. He says, put in a 1045 petition to get an advanced hearing. And he says, how long have you been waiting? And 7 years had already passed.
Okay.
And I said, about 7 years. And he goes, I'll help you do it. This guy's name is Tavo. He just got out of prison after,
right.
A life sentence. And I put it in, and they granted it.
You wasted all that time.
Yeah, they granted it, and they. At that point, I said, well, I have to now prepare for the parole board. But I'm in a general prison population.
But even though it's granted and that's happening, have you gotten a glimpse of possibly going home at that point in time?
No,
or not?
No.
Okay.
At that point in time, all I'm waiting for is to be picked up off the yard, sent back to the administrative segregation, reclassified, and sent back to the shoe.
Okay.
I mean, because that's my life.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That's been your experience.
Right. But they granted it, and these guys that were in this prison, that did not have the hope of freedom stripped from them, instilled in me the possibility of probably getting a shot at it. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And they helped me put the paperwork together, and I went through the process. I seen the psych, and the psych gave me a low classification.
Oh.
You know what I mean? And at that point, I said, damn, it's possible.
Possibly might get out.
Because once the site gives you a recommendation of low, then that's the first step to freedom.
Okay.
And then when I went to the parole board, you sit down and you immediately know. The way they talk to you, you know if you're going to get a parole date. And as soon as they open their mouth, I said, oh, shit. Of course, in my mind, I didn't say it out loud no more because this was not a time to clown them.
Now it was serious.
It was serious.
Sober as hell.
Yeah, he
And
was
you
like, aye.
And you learn to make those distinctions quite quickly when you're living in an environment like prison. Prison tones, voices, eyes, the way they walk, the tone of the yard, all that.
So how do they sound when you know you're not getting it?
They sound defiant.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Why should we give you a parole date? Have you debriefed? Why haven't you debriefed?
And when they are going to let you out, how do they sound?
They don't ask that debriefing question.
Ah,
You know what I mean?
All right.
They say, we've seen that you've been doing a lot this time. You know what I mean?
Right.
And the tones change. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I knew at that moment, I knew instantly. And plus, the attorney that I had was full of shit. He was no good. Yeah. And they never
Was he
are.
state
You know what I
appointed?
mean? State appointed,
attorneys.
Well, this guy, he the investigation he did, and I know that you mentioned your attorney. I remember now.
Yeah,
Sitting over there. The attorney that they appoint, they don't do no work. I mean, they literally
Right.
have one page
Right.
of stuff written down, and the stuff that's written down was literally supplied to them by the district attorney that's sitting on board in opposition to your parole.
Right.
So how can you say this guy's or this person is in my corner when the only information he's privy to
Right.
in order to present was the information provided by the opposition.
They're all on
Right.
the same team.
You know what I mean?
Right.
But this is not the case. And I sat in there and everything was going great. And then they called a recess because it was lunchtime. And I left. And of course, the thought was, okay, when I go back in after recess, their stomach's going to be full and the tone is going to be different. But when I went back in, it wasn't different. And they said, we find you suitable.
Can I ask you a question, Jack? It's pertinent to what you're talking about. When I was finally found suitable, and the same thing, he did the same thing to me. I had to ask him to repeat it. I really did because I wasn't expecting to hear that. But tell me, was the 120 days you waited the worst time you ever did?
Well, first
Tell
of
them
all,
what that's about.
Wait.
Yeah, we need to back up a
Hold
little
on,
bit.
yeah, hold
Hold
on.
on.
That's a good question, Brian, but
Yes.
hold on. When they said, we find you suitable, how did you feel?
I felt every emotion an individual can feel, but I knew because of past experience not to express any emotions. So I was stoic in that environment.
Right.
And when the words were spoken, I had a handkerchief balled up in my hand, and I just squeezed it without moving
Giving up,
anything.
without giving up any, yeah.
And just sat there and just, put all my energy into that handkerchief. You know what I mean?
Just to keep it together.
Just to keep it together. I mean, you're talking about 40 years,
Right.
And they just granted me parole because they decided, we're going to give this guy parole.
Right.
You know what I mean? And parole is a subjective environment in the first place. They say it's based on information that has been accumulated over time, but it is a subjective interpretation by the parole board members, whether they're feeling good that day or not good. And in fact, statistics have shown during the Christmas period, more parole dates are given as opposed to the New Year when it starts and they realize we can't give that many parole dates because they're going to fire us. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's not
objective. It's not neutral.
It's all subjective.
All
You know what I mean?
mood, what the setup is, how it's
Absolutely.
framed, all that shit.
But I was lucky to get him on that mood.
Hell yeah, dude. He was
And-
dreaming of a white Christmas.
And there was, I have to admit this, and I can't tell you the names of stuff, but I truly believe there was a person on the streets, influential person, a very kind person that had assisted me
Right.
behind the screens.
Right.
And I think that person is responsible for me being free today.
Right.
You know what I mean? But it's like he said that I got up and I walked out, and I walked back to the yard.
At what point did you allow yourself to finally let go of the control and express?
Well, I never let go of the control. I was in prison.
Right. But I mean, did you start crying when you finally made it back to the yard? Did you?
No.
No.
No,
you can't show any emotion like that.
Yeah, you see them and you tell them, hey, and they see the smile.
They know.
They know when you smile at them and you just, and they know. Right. And the word circulated throughout the prison. Jack just got a parole date.
Man,
you know what I mean,
now,
this guy just got a parole date, and everybody knew. And they all started coming up to me and asking me, "What did you do? How did you do it?" You know what I mean? All that.
And did you find yourself feeling a little bit, how do I say this? It's like something great just happened. You're not entirely sure how it happened, right? You weren't expecting it.
Oh, no.
And then everyone's coming up and want to talk about it. I know me personally, when something like that happens, I've never had that. But when something good happens that could still be taken away, I don't like to put too much heat on.
You're guarded. You're
right.
guarded.
So was it like that for you?
Absolutely.
You're like, hey, man.
But I was in a prison where some of the prisoners were still responsible for things that were taking place in there.
Right.
So the entire time I was on the main line, I was single cell. And they never gave me another person in my cell.
Right.
I knew the guy that made cell assignments, and he told me, you know what, I know who you are. I know where you're coming from. Do you want a cellie or do you want to be single cell? And I said, you know what, I want to be single cell.
Right.
He says, don't worry about it. I'll never put nobody in your cell.
Right.
So the entire time I was in general prison population, I was single cell.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I was able to go into my cell and express my feelings to myself alone.
Well, that's what I mean. What
But
did you do?
I was still reserved. You know what I mean? But there was a point in time, and I think everybody experienced this once they get a parole date. There was a point in time I was sitting in the cell and I was listening to some CDs, and there was this song, I think it was by Sam Cooke, and it says, "A time is going to come, or a change is going to come.
Change is gonna come.
A change is going to come." And I'm sitting on my on the shitter. I'm not using the restroom. It's just a seat. You know what I mean? How we use it. And I'm washing clothes, and this song comes on, and it's "A change is going to come," and I realized a change came. You know what I mean? All this time in prison, and that song started playing, and that's at the moment I realized, man, I'm getting out. You know what I mean? I was going to get out the joint,
song?
man. Yeah.
Look at you. You're getting a little misty-eyed.
Oh yeah,
just
I
hearing
mean,
this.
it's a memory.
God.
It's a memory, man. You don't forget the time you realize freedom's going to come.
Yeah, but let me say this now. That's still not there yet, right?
It's still, we're getting to that
We're
question
getting,
right
we're
now.
getting to it. We're
I
getting
thought
to it.
you-
Let
I thought it was
us
perfect
let
time.
us enjoy the shitter
Or you're
and
never
freedom
coming on the
with
show again if you
Gentleman
don't.
Jack. Gentleman Jack is now realizing he's about to get his freedom.
Yeah,
that song
and that
came
was
on.
it. And I was sitting in the cell by myself, man,
And did you have a chance to call anybody back home to say, "Hey, I got a parole date"?
I didn't use the phones in there. You have to remember, I had just spent almost 4 decades in solitary confinement under the scrutiny of the gang classification unit.
Right.
And I know how dirty they are. You know what I mean? And I never wanted to get on a phone and talk to somebody out on the streets. I never wanted to. In all the time I was right there on that line, I never. I was guarded about how I carried myself.
Right.
You know what I mean? There was, of course, I had the luxuries being offered to me.
Right.
But I never accepted any of them.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I lived a straight life in that environment as much as I could. And I never confided in other people about anything that I wanted to do or that I might have done or the way I would act. You know what I mean?
So at what point does anyone in your family? I mean, you say you're living with your mom now because she needs help. So she must have been waiting for you to come home for decades.
When I got arrested, she was living in Norwalk. And I told my mom many times over the decades, I said, "How come you don't move, Ma?" And she says, "When you get out, we'll move if you want to move."
Oh, man.
And in that time, all my family has, well, not all, I have 2 older sisters. My sisters are still alive, but my uncles, the ones that I was telling you were all in the military, they all died. Their wives, they have all died. All my mother's brothers and sisters, they're all dead. My grandparents, they passed away. My dad, he died. Everybody in my family, we're talking 40 years.
Yeah.
They've passed away. But I still have 2 sisters and my mother.
So do you, before we get to Brian's good question, do you write home then? Or do you
I write. I write.
Right.
The standard snail mail.
Right.
You know what I
And
mean?
so within a week of, so how long does it take for your mom and sisters to find out that there's a good chance you're coming home?
I write them probably within the week of getting a parole date. And I tell them, say nothing, do nothing, just here's what's happening, and this is the process now. I have to wait 120 days for the parole board's time to elapse to make a determination, and then I got to wait an additional 30 days for the governor's time to elapse so they make a determination. What that means is, so the parole board is not held responsible later on as a result of somebody getting paroled and released and committing a crime like this guy did.
Right.
You know what I mean? What they do is they don't make a decision. Instead, they allow that time to make the decision elapse. And once that time elapses, then they're not in the position to make a decision no more, and the decision that was made by the parole board becomes effective. Okay?
Right.
The same thing with the governor. If the governor does not make a decision within 30 days, the time elapsed, that means the parole board's decision is law.
Right.
So if I was to ever get out and do something horrific that somebody could then say, look at this, people did that, they could say, no, I didn't.
Right.
I never signed anything granting this guy parole.
The time just lapsed.
The time's just lapsed, and the only people that are responsible for paroling this person is the parole board.
So now,
I wait 150 days.
so first you wait 120,
Right.
and for Brian wants to know, how hard was that 120 days?
Oh, you're walking on eggshells. You know what I mean? You're still living in prison.
Right.
And that means everything that's taking place in prison is still taking place around you.
Right.
You know? And all the activity of young people that have not developed like I have over those
Right,
years
right.
are still coming in that prison. You know
Right,
what I mean?
right.
And so, I mean,
You just got to look straight ahead and not get involved.
you got to look straight ahead and not allow anybody to know that you're involved.
Right.
It's a nice way to put it.
Yeah.
And then you wait another 30 days.
Okay,
and I
so-
waited 148 days.
So when the 120 lapses, right? Do they take you to another place for the
No.
governor? You're still there.
You're sitting right there. It automatically kicks in. Once the 120 days elapse, the 30 days kick in. And you're waiting 30 more days.
And then while you're waiting those 30 days, is that even harder than the 120?
No, because you're not changing your routine.
Right.
You know what I mean? You're
Right.
still walking. But when that 130 days comes, it's a little bit more stressful because the governor then has to review, and the governor is basing that review in relation to political aspirations.
Right. He doesn't want to be blamed for anything because he wants to get reelected.
Right.
And who was the governor at that time? Do you remember?
Yeah, at that time it was
Arnold? No.
When did you get out?
Brown?
3 years ago.
So it would have
was
been
Brown?
Brown.
Brown.
Jerry Brown.
Jerry Brown.
That's a good one to have because he's a Democrat and
Yeah.
he's a liberal. and he
Especially
believes-
since I walked through, who was it, Davis. I
Right.
walked through Vandy Camp. I went through
Schwarzenegger,
Schwarzeneggers, you know what I mean?
Wilson,
Yeah.
All of them guys that said, oh, no, they're never getting out of jail.
So when the governor, when you finally make it past that hurdle, do they send like an envelope to yourself? Someone come and get you?
Yeah, no, they tell you in 2 days you're gonna walk.
Yeah.
What does that feel like?
Oh man, shit. By that time you're sitting in an empty cell because you've given everything away anyhow. You know what I mean?
And you just hold, and you, yeah. I had to hold on to my stuff because people were after it. I held to the last minute.
Right.
'Cause it was 121 days. They took no action, and I went home 2 days later.
Yeah, I started giving everything, giving everything on. Take it, man. Take it away.
And
You know what
so
I mean?
on that-
on the condition that if I don't parole, I get it back.
Right. And then when they walk you out, right? What's that walk feel like?
Oh man, you know, I mean, I got a picture of it.
Yeah.
My sister was out front, waiting for me to come out, man, and she took a picture of it.
Yeah.
Wow.
I got it right here. So you'll see me what I look like when I walked out of prison.
Yeah, let's see this. Because right now I'm looking at a very, classy, suntanned man. Looks like he's been enjoying the better life in Norwalk.
Seasoned silver fox.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
Came in with a
Dressed
fedora.
nice,
Right, nice shoes.
It's a little different. You know what I mean? I like to tell every people since I've been out. There's me in San Quentin when I was in the hole in San Quentin.
Oh, wow.
Gentlemen, Jack's handing around phones.
Nowadays, though, I like to let people know. Since I've been out, I've swam in the Atlantic Ocean, in the Pacific Ocean, and in the middle of the ocean when I went to Hawaii.
Wow.
Wow, really?
Man, you're looking kind of buff on this one.
Well, that's when they used to let us have weights in the hole.
Right. And you got like mutton chops.
Scroll it up. You could probably see the other one. I'm in.
Let me see.
Those are all pictures taken since I've been out.
Yeah. Trying to figure out which way to scroll this thing. Okay. And then I see, well, I don't know. Oh, Blue Eyes, can you figure out? I want to see the one where he walks right out. When you walk out, okay, so you're walking. How does it really go?
They take you to R&R. And in R&R, which is receiving and release, that's what it's called, R&R.
Right.
They put you in a holding tank. Everybody knows you're paroling. What they do is they provide you with some documents that say you're getting out. Okay?
Right.
They look through the property that you have to make sure that you're not taking anything. If you're paroling in stay closed, they're going to charge you for your stay closed.
Right.
And then they give you a $200 card.
Right.
Before it used to be $200 cash. Now they give you a debit card. You know what I mean?
Right.
And they gave me a debit card for $200, and they loaded me into a van, and they drove me to the out of the prison gates, parked, opened the door to the van, and told me, all right, get out.
Yeah, they just want you off property.
Yeah.
Wait, hold on a second. So you get in this van, you drive out the gates, and when you're driving out the gates, I mean, is weight being lifted off your shoulders as you get further and further away?
No, the weight's already lifted off your shoulders. When you're in R&R and you're getting all your shit, as soon as they load you in that van and they're driving to that gate, you know that's it. It's over.
Yeah,
Then they open the van and you step out and your sister's
That's
there.
the first time,
Now
though.
you getting out?
Yeah, because they can't take it away from you at that point.
No, that was at my birthday party. Let me see.
Man, guys got so many good photos, we can't figure out which one it is.
That's a birthday party they had for me when I got out. This is the poem I wrote. Remember I was telling you?
Yeah.
Want to hear it?
Yeah.
All right, this is the one they told. As soon as they told me they're letting me out the hole, they said they come up to my door and said, we're letting you out the hole. I sat down and I wrote this poem.
Go ahead.
And I called it Illuminated Future, 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 Future. You insidious serpent, suckling on human marrow of existence, insatiable in quest to sustain your capitalistic advancement despite inevitable destruction. You attempted to obliviate me while bending my recollection of reality into distorted hallucinations of madness. Those have expired. I am injured, beaten beyond physical characterization, annihilated both in mind and body. But I am not dead. You have failed to kill me. Daily I regenerate like the sun, illuminating my future, in 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 my future.
Oh, yes it will.
Yeah, I love that.
That's the one I wrote, man, when they told
Man,
me.
I'm seeing a old Blue Eye special on that one.
Yeah. Who's he gonna put his little?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking like even So you step out of the van, right? And so is that the first time? Like, what was it like stepping out of the van and knowing that's
Well,
it?
you know, you step out and you're not on prison grounds. I knew I was stepping out onto free ground. And that was, you know, I mean, how do you... Well, you're going to see right now. You're going to see the way I look, man.
I got a question that I ask everybody.
Right.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
When you took your first... Oh, hell yeah. Now, that's the one I was looking for. That's what I wanted to see. Yeah, you guys. All right. Now, that looks like you getting out. Beep that out.
All right. Let me describe
Yeah,
this.
describe.
Holy shit.
Yep.
Holy shit. First of all, you're stepping out. Obviously, it's the desert. There's palm trees and nothing but just like brown sand or whatever.
Well, this is in Blythe. Correct?
Blythe,
That's
right?
coming out of
Okay.
Ironwood.
It was fucking hot as fuck. And then you come out, and you could see like a little white van with the doors open. You're walking out, and I mean, you almost look like you're wearing robes, but it really looks like the shirt tucked into your
Sweat.
Yeah. And you got your white socks pulled up. You're a little trimmer than you are now, and you got a white mustache, dark hair, sunglasses. Where'd you get the sunglasses? Those state
They have
issue
'em.
sunglasses?
You can get them.
And then you're sitting there, and then you're carrying a bag of what is in that bag?
Law paper.
Oh, all right. So you got all your scholarly activities, and
Look
you
at that one, Brian.
look at that smile on his face, and you got a smile on your face, like holy shit, here I come.
That's freedom.
yeah.
Your first shower.
Freedom has at its
We're going to have that. But your first shower, did you or did you not wash your boxers when you took your first shower? Right?
That's funny.
My mom used to laugh at me because even after that, months after that, we'd be eating, and I would wipe my silverware off and sometimes stick it in my back pocket.
Right.
Yeah.
So you did wash your boxers
I
in the
washed
shower,
my
of course.
boxers and my socks and all that.
What was the first thing you ate when you got out?
My mom's tacos.
Yeah.
How good was that?
What was
It was, you know, that's my favorite meal. My mom's tacos.
Oh, yeah.
You know, she knew that's my favorite meal. And for 40 years, I thought about nothing but being able to sit across the table and eat them. And when I got out, my sister drove me home, and a lot of my family was at my mom's house. I walked in, and the table was set. And I sat down and I ate those tacos.
Could you
man.
smell those tacos before you even like sat down?
No, I had no idea that family members were there. They were having a dinner for me. None of that. I just, you know, I got out and we started driving home. And my sister said, pull over right here. And she pulled over into a casino. But I couldn't stay in there. You know, they had lights and sounds and all that shit. And I told them, come on, it's you know.
It was too much.
It smells like cigarettes. And, you know, I said, let's go. So we left. And they didn't say nothing about me arriving home and having a house full of family and a meal waiting right there, my favorite meal waiting right there, you know.
Yeah.
But that's exactly what happened, you know, and it was everything I thought it would be over 40 years of dreaming about it. You know what I mean? I almost forgot. I almost forgot so much time had went by what it would be like.
Do you know, one of the very first things that strikes me is, and you know, Brian, you know, and I'm not trying to bring up sore spots, but I know that Brian's mom lost his mom after
Sorry to
he
hear
got
that.
A month after I was found suitable, she passed.
right. So he was home, and I want to think right away. You know, look at we're not youngsters, we're older, and and I know that you've recently gotten out, and I think it's what a blessing that your mother was alive to watch this go down and so
It was-
alive to be here.
And Brian probably experienced this too. I mean, you don't necessarily have to hear anybody tell you you love them. You know what I mean? You just know that somebody loves you, and that gives you the strength and fortitude to move forward when times are difficult. A lot of people utilize religion. It's the same principle. I mean, it's the same strength, the inner strength that you gather that allows you to push just that much further so it can tell yourself, I can move forward. You know what I mean? So it's a mother's love. I mean, a mother's love, man, she don't have to say it verbally. You just, you could be 1,000 miles away and you can know that there's a person that cares so much for you that you want to get back to that person. And because of that, you'll go over, under, around, or through.
Yeah,
any
I never
object.
told my mom about the 120-day wait. The governor, I didn't want to stress her out.
Right.
So she, in her mind, I was coming home, and that's what mattered.
Yeah, that's it. And you know that you feel that. You know what I mean? And I'm sorry you had to experience that, man. That had to be difficult.
Yeah, it still is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me ask you. So, upon coming home, had you done some? I mean, you had educated. What type of educational stuff did you do? Say over the last decade, where you were down, and have you been able to? Were there things that you did that are helping you today, or was there? When did you catch vision of I want to help out and give back on a larger scale?
So when I was in the hole, when I was in the shoe, I lived in a section where I knew a lot of the guys for many of the years, and we realized that we had to educate ourselves because at that time Pelican Bay stopped allowing us access to education.
This is one of the things you guys were striking for.
Right. Mm-hmm. So what we did is one of the guys who was financially well off told me over the tier, he says, "Man, I want to learn math." And I said, "Well, I could teach you math, because I had in my solitude taken to educating myself from the very beginning, not only because I learned the value of education and knowledge, but because it was a time consumer. And anything to consume time contributed to my existence.
Take
my
your
survival.
mind off the time.
Right. So I started educating myself with mathematics when I was in Tehachapi in the hole in the 90s. In Pelican Bay, I mentioned this to this guy, and he says, "You know what? If I buy books for all of us, you want to have a class." And I said, "Buy the books every day, Monday through Friday, from 1 to 2 o'clock, we'll have class." And we did. We studied. We started at the beginning, arithmetic, and then we did a subtraction, multiplication, division. We worked ourselves up. So when I took my math class, when I took my math evaluation for college, they scored me at calculus, and I did not have to take a math for my AA degree. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that was just learning from us over the tier, figuring out how to do mathematics. All of us ended up learning to do advanced algebra, geometry, and calculus. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then we said, well, now that we know enough math, let's learn a new language. You know what I mean? And we were going to start to learn a new language. But they had heard us educating ourselves, and they broke the section up.
That's fucked up.
You know what I mean?
That's really fucked up. You imagine you bring together some guys with some, let's just say colorful pasts. You put them into some situation on their own initiative, right?
Yeah.
They fucking put together a school and you break it up. That school would have enabled you guys to explore and understand even bigger and broader things. And it just seems to me like a system that's just set up to keep you guys there.
It is. There's a quote by Maya Angelou, and she says, the more you know, the better you do. And I understand that. I understand that quote now, that the more knowledge you have, the more knowledge you're able to draw on, the better your decisions are going to be. You know what I mean?
Right.
You're going to be able to make wiser decisions about situations you're about to encounter.
Right.
Because you have more information to draw from in order to make the decision.
Right.
That's what education does. But when they broke it up, that's what happened. When they utilized the language we were going to learn, which was Nahuatl, an ancient Mexican language.
Yeah, right.
They said, "No, this is gang activity." They gave us all 1030 forms, gave us additional indeterminate shoe for gang activity because we were going to learn a language that the guards didn't know.
The indigenous language.
Yeah,
of
they
that
didn't know.
Right. So let me ask you this. What about sleep? Is there a difference in the sleep once you're outside versus inside, or did you have difficulty adjusting?
You learn, you change. It's like when you go into prison.
Yeah.
When you go into prison, you have to learn how to sleep.
And how do you do
have
that?
to learn how to talk and walk, and because you have to adapt and acclimate to the sounds of your environment.
Right.
If you don't, those sounds will always wake you. You know what I mean? Same way on the streets. My mom lives by a street that goes by, and sirens go by, or cars go by, or people go by.
Yeah.
Now, when I got out, I could not sleep at my mom's house, and fortunately for me, I did not have to. I spent a year in a halfway house.
Got it.
And I wanted to do that because it allowed me to acclimate to freedom more.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Reincorporate back.
Right. And I was right there on Hollywood Boulevard. I was literally on Vine in
Are
Franklin.
you at Hollywood Reentry?
Yeah.
That's where he's at.
Yeah.
That's
Right
where
now?
he's at now.
Yeah,
Oh, I spent-
sourdough foot. That's where he's at.
I spent a year there.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Slow this guy down.
All right.
Yeah.
But and at that time, I only had to do 6 months, but I voluntarily did another 6 months because you have to understand, I did my time.
Right.
And when I got out, I absolutely understood that you cannot catch time. Time passes, and that's all there is. If you try to catch time, then the only way to go is backwards because the time passes.
That's
Are
the
you
back.
are you getting that,
interesting way to
Steve?
think. That's
Are you
dope.
getting that?
That's dope, man.
So I knew that
Are you kidding?
from that moment I was going to live forward.
Because a lot of guys that in your situation, and not even in your situation, guys that just made, whatever decisions they made in the past. But I know myself, there's been times in my life where I thought, man, I'm behind everybody else and I need to catch up.
Yeah, you can't do that.
Right.
You can't do that. Life, we're living life now. When this interview is over, that time is gone. It's
Yeah.
going to be just a memory. It's going to be something that we're going to reflect on, hopefully to better our future. You know what I mean? But you can't run towards the future. It's not. You've heard it 1,000 times, 10,000 times. It's not the destination. It's the journey. We all know our destination. We're all going to die. You know what I mean?
right.
That's our destination.
Right. We all know that.
So enjoy whatever it is that you go through that until you reach that point, good or bad. It's life. And people are, and I don't like to say that good or bad because that's not what it is. Our interpretation of what is good and bad is a subjective interpretation.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Why would we even call it bad? You know what I mean? Why would we call it good? It is our life.
Right.
You know what I mean? If I read a book where a guy, it's an investment book, and
you
the
got
guy,
blue eyes crying over
the
here.
guy is talking about life, and he says, I invested $100,000 and I lost it. And then he says, man, my life is over. My life has changed. I've ruined my life. But in reality, all that happened is he lost $100,000.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
That's
Anything else that happens as a result of that is a result of his path
right.
on that.
Right. His
Right.
reaction to
Right.
it.
His reaction to that.
Right.
So the other day I was driving on the freeway. I've been out almost 3 years now. The other day I was driving on the freeway stuck in traffic, and I rolled down my window and I yelled out the window, thank God I'm part of the working masses. And I rolled my window back up and continued to drive slowly.
And
You
the
know what I
guy
mean?
next to you
Because
flipped out. He was like, who the hell is that
I was
guy?
happy to be in that environment.
Right.
I was happy to experience that part of life.
Okay, so you put your finger on something that's interesting. What do you think about this? Because you came out of a situation where a lot of shit was taken away from you. As a result, you understand the value of being here now or being in traffic or being a part of things, right? Yet, a lot of people have never gone through that. So there's a lot of people that had this like abundant childhood. They never really been challenged in certain ways. And then they don't even know how to count their blessings, and they're pissed off about good shit even. And so do you have a thought on how somebody, or what is your feeling or idea about how can we make people, or how can we encourage people to be more grateful or to truly appreciate what they have?
I use a principle in my life, I don't know where I learned this principle, but I use it now. It's about trying to convince somebody of something.
Right.
So if I tell somebody the truth, okay, and they don't listen, then it's their loss. And if I know it's actually factual, if I know it's the truth, I have to know it's the truth. And if I know it is absolutely the truth and I tell it to somebody and they don't accept it, then that's their loss.
Right.
Okay? There's no need for me to argue with this person about what I know is actually factual.
Right.
Okay? And if I tell somebody something that I don't know absolutely that it's factual, then I have no business trying to convince this person of it.
Right.
It relieves me of any confrontation that I may be able to, that I might be engaged in. Because if you tell somebody the truth and they want to argue about it, then you're wasting your time. And if you tell somebody something and you know that what you're telling them, you don't know absolutely, then you're wasting your time.
But that it goes against, and I'm not saying this in any way to be disrespectful at all, because I find that you found a certain balance. And I agree with what you just said, but I'm going to add to it. There was a point in time where you knew something was the truth, but you had to do collective action to convince the prisons that they can't hold you guys indeterminately in the shoe like that, and you guys went on a hunger strike. So how is that? Where would you put that difference where you're like, listen, I am convincing them. I'm convincing them. They don't want to listen to the truth, but I have to tell them because we got to stop this, versus you saying, I'm just talking to somebody and they get it or they don't get it.
No, it's the language that you're using. We're not convincing them. We're exposing them. There's a difference between the two. Exposing somebody when they're doing wrong and convincing them that they're doing wrong are two different things.
Wow. That's fucking right on.
That's what we're doing. So I try not to argue with people. In prison, I lived in an environment where you didn't argue.
Right.
You know what I mean? I lived a lifestyle where you didn't raise your voice at people. I lived a lifestyle where you didn't tell people, hey, you're wrong. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Because if they were, you dealt with it. You didn't have to tell them you're wrong. You dealt with them. And then when you was done with it, you tell them, that's what you get.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I lived in an environment where you didn't raise your voice at somebody, because if you did, you dealt with it.
Right.
You know what I mean? I live that lifestyle out here, not because I have to deal with it, but because I have an option to or not to deal with it. And I choose to walk away from it because the world is too big to have to stand there in front of somebody and have a confrontation with somebody about something that is opposed to what you believe. Otherwise, there wouldn't be no confrontation. And if you're in opposition to what I believe, then I'm wasting time in trying to convince you of my beliefs, because those are your beliefs.
Right.
Let me ask you this. Give us a little bit of a kind of bring us up to speed today. Did you over the last 3 years since you've been out, did you have aspirations that kind of came to you at once? Did you know you wanted to help? Did you know what field? Did you begin going to school? Like, give us an update today. Where are you going? What are you doing?
Well,
what's it look like for you?
When I mentioned that person's name, that when I went to the parole board, that I think he helped me out, I helped him out when I got out of the shoe. He came to my cell the very next day, and he asked me, would I help him enlighten the younger prisoners in the joint that they had just put me in, and would I tutor them in math and English and show them direction that what they've heard about prison doesn't necessarily have to be the reality of prison. Okay? And I told him, yeah, I'll help. So he got me into the college program, and I started tutoring youth prisoners. When I say youth prisoners, I mean young prisoners, 21, 22, 23 years old. who believe that when you're coming into prison, the first thing you have to do is to pick up a knife and get off.
Right.
You know what I mean? I wanted to change that mindset. So I started, they all knew me that was me. They knew me in the prison system that I was a guy that would pick up a knife and get off. But when I didn't, they looked and they say, why isn't he doing what we've heard he does? You know what I mean? Why is he going to school and trying to help us learn math or learn English or telling us that education is the best thing for them? You know what I mean? When I got out, that man offered me a job. And of course, I didn't accept the terms that he offered me because he offered me a full-time job. I just did 40 years. I'm not going to go to work. I want to see what the damn world's about. You know what I mean?
Right. So we get a little time here to catch up. Right?
You know what? My cousin King Salmon's doing the same thing.
Yeah. I told him, I'll work for you for part-time. And I was on GR. You know, I was getting GR and I was getting grow money, and that was $400 a month for me. I was living on 11 cents. $400 was a fortune.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I wasn't looking to buy fancy clothes or jump into a big old automobile. You know, that wasn't my idea of entering into society. My idea was learning what society was. You know what I mean? Right. So I'd sit down there on Hollywood and Vine at the donut shop and eat donuts and stare at people.
Brian, you hear that?
No.
Because he was that.
No, he
because
doesn't.
he didn't
Yeah,
hear him.
yes, I did.
He was what?
He saw my sitting on the dead.
See, he didn't hear that.
He didn't hear it. What you didn't hear is that he went through Hollywood reentry and he stayed there for a year. Okay, go ahead. We'll get back to Brian on that. Go right ahead.
Go ahead, please. So,
He told me this before. You told me that story, right? We talked
but
a lot
Brian
about this, bro.
never doesn't know anything. He knows everything.
Be honest. Did we talk about that before? Thank you. I'm not lying to you about
Okay,
it.
so go on.
So you know, he hired me as a guy at the front desk at ARC, and I greeted people. You know what I mean? And I learned I started to learn the ethics of working again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Of having a boss and someone telling me how to do something and what to do, and you know, and I learned the importance of being there and being responsible. And he employed me for about 5 months, and at that point I was offered a different job. I was offered a job at St. John's Well Child and Family Center, and they wanted to employ me in the reentry department. For the Office of Diversion and Reentry. And the only qualification I needed was I had to have experience in incarceration.
You got a little bit of that.
So I told him at that point, you know, I'm a subject matter expert on that
Right.
point. You know what I mean?
Right, absolutely.
I
Did
know
a lot
all
of
about,
research.
I know
You did a
all
lot of
about
research.
incarceration, and I know, and I'm learning reentry.
Right.
Because I'm doing it. I'm learning.
Right.
I'm going through all the steps.
What's the biggest challenge of reentry that people don't understand?
Well, there's different levels. They have to understand. Brian did 23 years?
35.
35 years? I did 40. It's different for us to reenter society than it is for somebody that went and did a year in county jail. You know what I mean?
Right.
They're two totally different processes.
One size doesn't fit all.
One side does not fit all. You could provide the assistance to both, but they have to be provided in different increments. For me, and I'm sure for Brian, the most important thing was being able to identify who we were. That means getting your documents, your California ID, your social security card, your birth certificate, a driver's license. Because without those documents, nobody knows who the hell you are. Right. You could tell them, this is me. No, it's not. Why isn't it? Because you're not in our computer.
Right.
And after 40 years or 30-something years, you're erased from all those computers. You know what I mean? They don't know who you are. So that's
all
that's
I
a
had
process.
was my sheet that the parole office gave me for identification. That's
right.
all I had.
So, you know, the first thing is to get those. So there's a process depending on your time. When they hired me at St. John's, they only hired me because of my time. I didn't know a computer. Hell, I didn't enjoy, although they had them, I never touched a cell phone because it would have sent me back to the hole.
Right.
You know what I mean? I never got on the phones in the block. because I didn't want people listening to my conversation with loved ones. You know what I mean? So I had no access to technology. The first technology I ever had was after the hunger strikes in Pelican Bay. They allowed us to get a CD player. And that was my first CD player. That was in 2015. I got my first CD player. Couldn't use CDs because you can make knives out the CDs. But I had the CD player in my cell and I could listen to the radio. And that was my exposure to technology. You know what I mean?
Technology's the huge one. What are your plans? What can we expect of Jack over the next few years? What is what's going on with you?
I don't know. A lot. It's a question. A lot of people, now that you're out, what are you going to do? Come on. I just did 40 years in the system. I don't know what I'm going to do. I know I'm going to walk down here to the corner and buy me an ice cream. Beyond that, I don't know what I'm going to do.
Best flavor ice cream.
Yeah, but I don't try to. I know what I'd like to accomplish. You know what I mean? Whether I'll accomplish that, life is fickle. It may not present the opportunity, and I'll decide something else. You know, but like all people, I want to get my bachelor's and then my master's. You know,
hell yeah.
In what?
I want to in criminology,
Right on.
justice
Hell yeah.
administration, or something like that.
Listen, if you need an attorney, right, to give you an internship or anything,
you know what?
Ovando Bowen LLP, one of the greatest law firms in Southern California, in the world actually, is available. I'm just letting you know.
I did a lot of legal work in jail.
Right.
You know what I mean? I've written hundreds of writs.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I've done as many civil actions and tort claims, and I'm not into. I don't want to mess with the law no more because I broke it long enough, and then I worked on it long enough, and I want to do so. I want to help those now re-entering in the community. You know what I mean?
Helping people.
Right on.
And I think for that, my position at St. John's allows me to do that. The other day we drove up to Wasco State Prison. Dolores and I, we rented a van and we drove up there and picked up 12 guys getting out of the joint. You know what I mean?
That's
Just because they needed a ride home, and we drove them down.
How did one of our listeners, because we'll attach it to the post as well, but how do they find you, man? Somebody listening right now, and they want to try and get some help.
All they have to do is call me on a cell phone.
Do you have an email?
I have an email.
Why don't you tell everybody your email right now?
My work email is jmorris@wellchild.org.
That's easy enough.
Easy.
That's easy. And you're currently at St. John's.
St. John's. I've been working at St. John's now about 2.5 years.
Rumor has it you wrote a book.
I've written a couple books. Yeah.
Two.
Are those books out for sale? Where can we find those books, and what's the title of those books?
Let's see. I got them right here.
We need to know.
There's the title.
Yeah.
All right. So you have the world of Jack L. Morris,
Nice.
right?
Nice.
Yeah.
And the other one is Duration, My Story.
Yeah.
By Jack L. Morris. So did you get that, everybody?
Yeah, wake up. Fucking order this book.
Yeah, order The
Do it now.
World of Jack
Do it
L.
now.
Morris or Incarceration, My Story by Jack L. Morris.
Do
you
it.
guys need to look that up.
Do
to
it.
find
Do
that.
it. You know what? Jack Morris. Let me just say something. I know.
Jack L. Morris.
Listen, Jack. That
Sounds
name,
like an author.
fucking classic name, right?
Yeah.
Jack Morris.
doubt.
I fucking love that. Is there any way we could start a talent agency and call it Jack Morris?
It sounds like an agency, doesn't it?
right? Or an ad
Morris
agency. Fucking great.
I want to just thank you, man. I want to thank you, Jack, for coming down.
yeah.
And I want to keep this door open here at the Hard Luck Show for you, whether it be a platform to help educate, to help yourself, to get people knowing. I just want to thank you, man, for coming down today, man, sharing your story, man. Keeping it real with us. And
Danny
letting us
told me
in.
about you guys. Danny.
Yeah.
Danny
Shout
Murillo.
out to Danny Murillo.
Shout out
Danny
to Danny.
Murillo.
Danny Murillo. Both of you from the same area.
Yeah.
That's right.
Absolutely, man. Just like Norwalk's in the house.
Right,
bro.
Norwalk is deep in
Got
that.
a lot of love for Norwalk area.
Danny's a good dude.
Yes,
He
He's
is.
awesome, dude. And he's going to be coming back on. And like I said, I want you to come back on. I want you to know that you always got a place and some friends over here, man.
Anything
at the
you
Hard
want,
Luck Show.
Yeah, anything you want to promote or any ideas you want to get out in the or anybody that you come across that you think their story is an important story for people to hear, like yours.
Mm-hmm.
They're welcome here.
Do you have any plugs? Ovando Bowen. And I'm talking about the greatest attorneys and law firm on the planet
Right.
Earth.
Right. Botany Farms. I'm just going to go out on a limb and just fucking say it. Botany Farms, you're going to be hearing about their craft cannabis. They're sponsors of the show.
Beautiful jars.
Unbelievable. And we gave Kitty, Rachel Sterling, a blunt. She's going to come back and tell us how crazy that was.
Yeah, that was.
But we got a paid sponsor, Botany Farms, blah, blah, blah. Where are they
Shout
from?
out to Botany
Yeah,
Farms.
where are they from?
Minnesota?
Minnesota.
Oh, I thought they were from Lancaster.
Right on.
Okay, go ahead.
No.
Been in the news a lot lately.
Minnesota.
right.
And then Hard Luck T-shirts, right?
Hard Luck T-shirts.
We got our website up.
up.
Right.
And you want to tell the people how to get there?
Hardluckshow.com.
There you go. Go to
I'm gonna spread that
hardluckshow.com. And
My wife put that together.
Yes, Sarah.
So you
Sarah
have, you
Bowen.
have a section where you're selling T-shirts.
We're selling
Yeah,
T-shirts.
yeah.
And we're slowly go ahead and hop on, and you will see it's also growing. We've got different things.
Yeah,
going in
this
that
is the
website.
first setup of the website.
First layer.
Right. But what's great about it is an awesome picture of you, right? And then there's that picture of me in the like shadows or whatever that is. And then you go down and you see old Blue Eyes, and it's just like
He's
a
got a
regular
dildo
nice
in
like
his mouth.
No. No.
Hey, now your family can't go on and see that.
No, but funny. Look, Sean, go down the pictures. There's Steve with his shirt off and all his tattoos out.
Oh, no.
There's me, black and white, looking mad, and then there's just Sean, nice white
Playing
guy.
harmonica.
No, he's just like a nice white guy, just staring.
Yeah.
He's like, "Hi."
I
how's
didn't
it
see it. I couldn't get to. Okay.
No, and then
You look like you're about to commit a crime.
I know I look
Yeah,
pissed
yeah,
off,
yeah,
right? My wife wants that one. All right, that's okay. Very good. Listen, Steve.
Shout outs to Vibes.
Jesus.
Jesus, shout out to Jesus. Hey, shout out to Cookies. Go visit Cookies. Shout out. Keep an eye out. Westlos documentary. Supermax hardware.
Right.
Dropping in about 30 days.
Right.
What else we got? Sean.
Old Blue Eyes Network.
City Green Builders.
Oh, that's right.
City
Yeah.
Green.
City Green.
Yep.
City Green
Father-in-law.
Builders. If you're up in the Northern California
By Tehachapi.
Bay Area, yeah,
Yes.
why not?
Okay.
Guy
him
can
up.
build anything, right?
Yeah.
Does
Thank
he
you,
know
Sean.
anything about solar panels?
Yes.
Okay.
You do,
All right.
Brian? Brian, what are you plugging? Are you plugging anything?
Okay.
Okay.
Brian, thank you for coming down, Brian.
Kitty
Again,
Sterling,
love your
Rachel
Keith
Sterling app,
Sterling.
Rachel Sterling app, fans
And
only.
Chumahan. How about that? Can you give him a solid law firm plug real quick? For
Yes,
yourself?
listen, Ovando Bowen LLP. Actually, believe it or not, I've had 2 of our fans hit me up on Instagram to say, call me. I'm not going to talk to these cops unless my lawyer's there. I said, bet, I'm there. Don't worry. First rule of business, shut the fuck up. Second rule of business, call me and let's get it straightened out.
Shoot, I'm telling you, if you have any legal troubles or need any help with legals,
Right,
get at my
or
man.
Indians. If you're stuck on a reservation and Indians don't want to let you out, I can maybe intercede for you.
Jack again.
Amazing.
Amazing, dude. Just,
Thank you.
Yeah, and you're going to be coming. This is not the first and it's not the last. You have an open door policy over
you.
here. Okay?
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Always, my
When
man.
we
Thank
have
you
that
all.
round
I
table, we're
appreciate it.
thinking of a round table.
Yeah, and we're gonna have him and Danny and a couple other people headed up.
And I really would like a female perspective
Oh.
as to prison.
One other thing.
Yeah.
Vote for Prop 17. That's to give the people getting out on parole that are on parole the right to vote.
Yeah, we like that. So yes on Prop 17.
Yes on Prop 17.
What'd you say, Brian?
I was through Sonia Tross in San Francisco. I helped push a lot of. We didn't get enough signatures, but she's pushing that issue as well to try to get parolees.
I've been out 3 years. I've been paying taxes, and I have no state representation.
You can't vote.
There was a revolution fought over that.
That's
Yeah,
right.
there you go.
There you go. And listen, upcoming shows. What do we got? Murder Machine Part 2. We got who else is coming?
We have John Chase coming on. We also have Anger from Can't Be Stopped Graffiti Crew. We also have Mr. Cartoon coming up. We have DJ Muggs, the
What
Soul
about
Assassin coming
you?
up.
Just got done with a shoot on the West Los, Santa Monica, and we haven't even talked anything about what went down, how the shoot went, what was going on.
Yeah.
Is there a story there?
Not for today, but in a quick snapshot, we have finally basically completed all the filming for
Right,
West Los,
right.
and now the film is heading into the post-production stages right now.
Right, but Jack, and just so you can understand, Steve is a guy with multiple talents. He does multiple things. He's working on clothing, media, and all this other stuff. He's got a documentary. Now, you have been busier, my friend. I've never seen you this busy, and I think we need to have a catch-up show on what you're up to.
Yeah, let's do that. So that's coming up. No,
Yeah,
we are.
all right, we gotta get out of it.
We've got some great true crime shows coming up.
Norco 80.
There you go.
Norco 80.
We got some really good stuff coming up down the pipe. So everybody keep tuned in.
Golden State Killer.
Golden State. We got a lot of good stuff.
Right.
Listen, tune in, stay in touch, and we're gonna say hasta la vista, ciao, and adios from the Hard Luck Show.
Oh, yes it will. Oh, yes it will.